said about borrowing, Madam President. And it is not only government that is borrowing, given the unexpected negative impact of COVID-19. People who never thought they would need to borrow are currently facing financial institutions, family and friends to borrow from in order to sustain themselves. Government is no different, Madam President. While under normal circumstances and given the growth and development that we were experiencing prior to the onset of the pandemic, we would have developed a revenue stream to sustain any borrowing that government had to undertake. However, we are not able to do so under the current situation. This pandemic is unprecedented, Madam President. No one can predict what to expect from one day to the next, and so we must have the vision that will help us cushion the potential threat that looms beyond our horizon. Madam President, the health and well-being of our people are of paramount priority for my government. And this is why we are here today requesting that my fellow senators support this resolution to fortify our COVID-19 response plan. Madam President, I present this motion for approval of my fellow Senate colleagues.
Senators, the question is that Parliament authorize the Minister of Finance to borrow an amount of US $30 million from the Caribbean Development Bank, consisting of a special funds resources portion in the amount of US $10,800,000 and an ordinary capital resources portion in the amount of US $19,200,000 for the purpose of financing the implementation of policy reform initiatives designed to support St. Lucia's COVID-19 crisis response and achieving fiscal stability. Be it further resolved that A, in the case of the special funds resources portion, 1, the loan is repayable in 80 equal or approximately equal and consecutive quarterly installments on each due date of the first day of January, the first day of April, the first day of July, and the second day of October of each year, commencing on A, the first due date after the expiration of 5 years following the date of the loan agreement, or B, a later due date specified in writing by the Caribbean Development Bank. 2. Interest is payable quarterly at a rate of 1% on the amount of the special funds resources portion withdrawn and outstanding. B, in the case of the ordinary capital resources portion, 1, the loan is repayable in 40 equal or approximately equal and consecutive quarterly installments on each due date of the first day of January, the first day of April, the first day of July, and the first day of October of each year, commencing on A, the first due date after the expiration of 2 years following the date of the loan agreement, or B, a later due date specified in writing by the Caribbean Development Bank. 2. Interest is payable quarterly at a rate of 4.1 per annum on the amount of the ordinary capital resources portion withdrawn and outstanding. 3. A commitment charge. A, is payable quarterly at a rate of 1% per annum on the amount of the ordinary capital resources portion unwithdrawn. B, accrues from the 60th day following the date of the loan agreement. Leader of Opposition Business.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, I rise to respond to the Leader of Government Businesses request for support for this bill as presented. Well, resolution, my apologies, to borrow as presented. Madam President, the resolution presented today with respect to this borrowing of $30 million US approximately 80 million EC for COVID response and fiscal stability. This is the basis that was presented or provided. So there basically are two facets. One is for COVID response, the other for fiscal stability. And it is quite clear that this is a policy-based loan. So we want to borrow money because we have to maintain fiscal stability, and we also want to support policy. Now, Madam President, from departure, I want to make it very clear that thus far, the government, as we have heard and seen, seems to have a single formula for responding to or attempting to deal with every single challenge. And in this case, it is no different. And that formula, Madam President, is borrowing. So I did mention there are two facets. So our response to our COVID response is borrowing. Our fiscal stability response is borrowing. And Madam President, at times it looks like the government even wants to resort to blaming, as was attempted earlier on by the leader of government business, Minister for Health. I will not deliberate on it because you ruled on it. I think you have taken care of the issue earlier, except to say that I think she should have been made to withdraw the statement. Very irresponsible, in my view, Madam President, for the Minister for Health to have made an attempt to do we know what, but I will not even give it any more mileage in this house. So, Madam President, back to blame the opposition, and I'll leave it at that. I said I'm not going to give it much mileage, and I mean that. Madam President, back to the issue of support being sought by this Honorable House to authorize that borrowing. It is important to note that St. Lucia is one of two countries in the region accessing that loan. Bahamas is also accessing a similar loan from the CDB. And I think that this clearly states or shows that these countries, like St. Lucia, have a very strong level of dependency on tourism. So that would have been expected to form part of the justification for CDB giving the Bahamas and St. Lucia that loan. And I'm sure we will agree that St. Lucia, among the Eastern Caribbean countries, is one of those most dependent on the tourism sector for its development. So I noticed also, Madam President, that the bill is down for first reading and not going through all its stages. Am I correct? Just want to be clear before I move on. I can see Madam President is there to assist me and to protect me.
It's a resolution, not a bill.
Oh, okay, good, thank you. So I had to be cautious to make sure I was trading properly. So, Madam President, as a policy-based...
Honorable Leader of Government Business.
On a point of order, Madam President, 37.5. The leader of opposition business seems to be imputing improper motives of me, Madam President. And he's saying that I said something that he cannot even repeat, but I said it in this house. So I would like to know what it is that I said that he cannot repeat.
Senator Ferdinand, are you interested in repeating what you said?
Madam President, unless you insist, I am not, because I made the point that I did not want to give it mileage in this House. You dealt with it earlier, and I think the Honorable Senator knows exactly what I'm referring to.
Madam President, then you would have to withdraw the statement because I don't know what he's talking about.
Except that he hasn't quite made a statement about it. So I don't know what you would want me to withdraw. I think that the matter was dealt with. According to him, I allowed you all to dispose of the matter without referencing it further. So I will leave it at that.
Thank you, Madam President.
Proceed, Seth.
So I proceed, thank you. As I said, Madam President, it is a policy-based loan, and where there are policy statements or policy is made or you enact a legislation, then you engage in implementation. So if this is a policy-based loan, you would expect that the justification for borrowing would come from the policy statements or the policies that are outlined. And I await that policy statement. I think in this Honorable House we have a Minister for Health and who is best placed to make those kinds of statements. Madam President, I also want to suggest and ask that prior to this sitting, we have come here before to borrow money, to approve borrowing for COVID support. We have. Recently we did from the IMF facility. And to date, we are yet to receive a comprehensive report on what happened with those monies. I know we've mentioned certain things, one or two things, but I think it would be correct and proper that the House receives a comprehensive report on what the previous borrowing, the previous funds have been used for, and detail what we have done. And so we can say we have done X, Y, and Z, and we are returning now to borrow more to achieve the other things that we have not achieved. I think it would be quite reasonable if St. Lucians had been given an update on what has been done with the previous monies that were borrowed for COVID support before we come back to borrow another portion. So, Madam President, I also want to say that we have to pay attention to how we manage the fiscal situation that we're facing because of COVID. I believe that in the absence of a comprehensive update on what has been done so far, it leaves me with a lot of concern because we are doing something, we are borrowing more money before we know everything that was done with what we borrowed before. Now, there are other sectors that I believe, Madam President, and the opposition believe, that could benefit and could have benefited from what we borrowed before and what we are here to borrow again. And I think, without putting too much detail, we can look at the agricultural sector, which is also affected by COVID. We can look at the school sector, education sector, fisheries, and I think it is quite clear so far, based on the pronouncements by Ministry of Education officials, that they can do with some assistance. In fact, at the last briefing that was provided by both the Permanent Secretary and the Deputy Permanent Secretary, only on Tuesday, the officials were making reference to the challenges that they are facing with the situation that we face with schools doing virtual learning because of the COVID situation. And so, if the officials are talking about support, seeking support from our local service providers with MiFi, they're also mentioning sourcing assistance from corporate citizens. I think that this specific second attempt at borrowing money for COVID support should take into consideration very seriously their concerns. And Madam President, I just want to remind the House of some of those concerns so that when we, and if and when we get approval for this loan, that these things become priority, that we do not make the same mistakes that we have made before, where we borrow money, and when we're about to spend the money, our priorities are misplaced. Because one of those sectors that is seriously affected by the situation at hand with COVID is the education sector. As a parent with children at secondary schools, I am directly affected. And I am very curious about what from this loan that is being secured is going to be allocated, particularly with the current challenges we face with e-learning. So, Madam President, I was about to give you a few examples of these issues that I hope will be addressed as this loan is approved. One of them, Madam President, is securing internet access for the children who do not have. And while there's nothing wrong in partnering with private sector enterprises, and I will not name them. Earlier on, you did remind me that I think I named. So without naming any specific person, there are some service providers that are willing to assist. But I think the primary responsibility in that regard is that of central government. Let the central government lead the way by doing what it has to do first, and then calling on others to help in the effort. I think that would be a very commendable way to do it. So the central government leads the way and say, look, we are putting this into securing those gadgets for our students. Let the service providers come on board. But it seems, based on what has been happening, that the priorities aren't that correct. So, Madam President, I believe that the policy-based response, because remember I said this loan has two facets: COVID response and fiscal stability. The policy-based aspect is, and in this case I'm not going to refer to the professionals in the health sector, but I want to refer to the policymakers, because they are the ones who make policy. And the policymakers are in this honorable house. Madam President, what have they been telling us? What are the policymakers saying to us while we expect them to outline policy on how COVID response will be dealt with and how money will be spent? What are they saying? Madam President, they're talking about who's number one in the world. We hear about backdoor and front door arguments and who's better than who. Madam President, these statements don't sound like policy statements to me. They don't. When you come to this honorable house, whether it is in the lower house or in the Senate, and you engage in arguments about who is better than who is number one in the world, and this morning it was being mentioned again, you know, I think we must take the argument beyond comparing which government is doing better than which government and pay attention to the relevant issues now. Who attended NEMAC meeting and who did not. These are the kinds of arguments that the policymakers are coming to this honorable house to make regarding this bill. And what we need to talk about is to make very clear to St. Lucians what we intend to do with the monies that we're borrowing to spend on COVID. These are not policy statements. So I'm hoping I'll hear some today, Madam President.
Honorable Leader of Government Business.
Madam President, I stand up.
One moment, Honorable Leader of Government Business.
Madam President, I stand on a point of order 37.1. I am hearing the fellow senator saying about, in this honorable house, we have spoken about front door, back door. I do not recall that having been said in this chamber throughout today, Madam President, what he's talking about. So,
that is correct, Senator. You're referencing what was not stated. Please move on.
I expected the two interruptions, Madam President. I hope I get time if needed. I will move on. My essential point, Madam President, is not so much about what was uttered specifically in this House or any other place. I made reference to policymakers making statements regarding COVID that are not policy statements. And we should move to making policy statements instead. So as you have...
Senator, to be correct, you stated that they were stated in this House.
If I did, I
stand corrected.
simply
say that they were stated by policymakers, and that is the reason for the correction. Please move along.
Madam President, would you like me to give an example that was stated in this House earlier this morning?
The two that were referenced by the Leader of Government Business
Yes.
were not stated in this House today.
Very well.
That's what we are referencing.
Good. And
So
I have
please,
agreed.
Please move along.
Yes. So let me move away from this, because that's not the essence of my contribution. the essence of my contribution here, Madam President, is that we seem to be more concerned and interested in, statements and utterances that are not policy-based. And we need to move away from that and concentrate on what we are here to do. So, when it comes to our response to COVID and our justification for borrowing, we need to be hearing statements such as what we have done in securing PPE. Madam President, I have not heard any report in this Honorable House about something to do with the quantity of PPE that has been secured. And that's, in my view, straight down the aisle of the Ministry of Health. The state of our respiratory hospital, Madam President, that would be a more appropriate thing to say. I would expect that something like that could have been given. We could have gotten an update on the state of the respiratory hospital. We have had a significant change in the activity regarding COVID and what kind of equipment we've secured. These kinds of statements would have been a lot more in line with what we're doing. But we're not hearing that. We're not. So while I want to move away from what was not supposed to be said, I am now focusing on what ought to be said. And I'm hoping that we begin to hear a lot more of those types of statements. So, Madam President, I also want to draw the attention to the Honorable House to something that is very simple, a very simple concept that we sometimes miss, and that is best practice. In almost every aspect of governance, there's always opportunity for us to look around us, at our neighbors, whether it's in the region or beyond, and pick up from them what they may be doing that's working. Now, I'm not suggesting that we copy things wholesale, but I'm sure we can cite examples from the region, the Caribbean neighbors, and from beyond, where certain practices or certain responses are actually working, and try to take a page from that, rather than blaming on all the other things that we're doing. And I think we have a couple of examples close by. We may want to consider, for example, an initiative that Barbados has taken, what we call double testing, where we, just to be on the safe side, we test and we double test. We can start talking about that. That's a better conversation, Madam President. So when we respond and we borrow, we say we're borrowing money to do certain things, let us pay attention to best practice. Let us engage in that type of discussion. And I don't think I'll have to be interrupted along those lines. So, Madam President, back to the issue of the policy. The policy-based loan should be informed by your policies. And the initiatives that you take should be articulated based on your policies. But I get a feeling, Madam President, that in this case, the government seems to be operating in reverse. Ideally, you should articulate your policies, you should state clearly what you want to do, and then you come to borrow or you come to seek resources to back it up. That seems to be the way it ought to be done. Now, I don't profess to be prescribing anything here, but I think we can all agree that before you come and seek to borrow, to do anything, you should have a clear plan as to where you're going. But it seems to me that we're doing the reverse. We are here for the second time to borrow money for COVID support. But what I was talking about earlier on, the clear plan and policy about what is our position on what we're doing has not been there. We have heard detached bits and pieces. There's a lot of reaction to things. When something happens, we react. There's a lot of reactive play going around, but we're not giving the clear picture of where we are at. And that is why I asked to account. Account for what you've spent, account for what you've done with what you've borrowed. Clearly stated where you're going, and then you come back and say, okay, we've spent X amount from what we had before on upgrading the respiratory facility or on upgrading our quarantine facilities, and we are out of funds. So now we are back because we would like to get some more to do why. But no, Madam President, we are borrowing, and then we go and sit down and try to figure out what we're going to do. So, Madam President, I think the basic principle of good governance is to embrace the thought that things can be done in a different way. I think sometimes I get the impression that this government believes that, yes, they are the government and they have the responsibility to point the way. But when you have decided to do something in a certain way, don't believe that your way is the only way. And governance is not about the executive, the cabinet of ministers, and the persons who have won the elections. Governance embraces the opposition, civil society, and several other stakeholders. And in some cases, the best ideas, the best suggestions, the best advice comes from there. And I would like to encourage this government to pay attention to what I consider the other way. There is always a different way. It may not always be correct, but pay attention to it. And don't just bracket every suggestion that comes or every objection that comes as if it is doom and gloom and trying to stop government from doing its work and wanting the country to fail. That is why, Madam President, in this specific resolution, I have called for two things, essentially. One, that before we borrow again, let us give an account of what we've done with what we borrowed before. And secondly, if we want fiscal stability, we must ensure that our borrowing is guided by policy. So I hope that this is taken in good faith, because this is why I presented it this way, and that we will get some kind of positive response in that regard. Thank you, Madam President.
Honorable Minister for Home Affairs, Justice and National Security.
Thank you, Madam President. Stay here, right? Over there? I think I'll stay here. Madam President, I stand to give my support to the resolution for the borrowing of the $30 million from the Caribbean Development Bank for policy reform initiatives and to support the COVID-19 response. I'd like to go down a little history as to how we got to where we are and the reasons why we need to do some borrowing. When we remember very early this year, maybe about March, April, we had the tourist boats come into St. Lucia, and then we got the incidents of COVID. This government, the St. Lucian government, took the bold step of deciding that they were going to stop the tourist ships from coming here. We were threatened by some of those persons. Dominica, Grenada, St. Vincent followed our lead. They recognized the danger and followed our lead. We were castigated, we were berated, but we stood strong. The Barbados government at the time called and requested that all those ships come to Barbados, because they're not allowed to come to St. Lucia, not allowed to go to St. Vincent, Grenada, Dominica, so we are embracing you, come. And they all went, and this was the first country in the Caribbean that recorded a COVID case. It's clear history, and our senator of the leader of opposition business went down that road and talking about the double testing. It is a good idea, but you must also remember that when we close our borders, that all the leaders of the Caribbean chose our Honorable Prime Minister, Alan M. Shastney, to be the lead on the reopening of the tourism system. We didn't do it. Leaders, all the leaders chose him because they recognized that he was a guru when it came to tourism. He understood. He understands tourism, and he was very tough. He made a decision that he was not going to allow any tourists to visit St. Lucia unless they took the PCR test before they boarded the plane to come to St. Lucia. Again, St. Lucia was berated. Jamaica, Antigua, Barbados, they all went ahead and allowed the tourists to come in. And we saw what happened. Jamaica, Antigua, Barbados, skyrocketed. Today, the same Prime Minister from Barbados is now recommending, and we don't even know the circumstances. Here, when a tourist comes in with his PCR test, he goes to a authorized and recognized hotel where they are in quarantine for his first 7 days. That is the policy. You want to hear policy? That is the policy. You must go there. In Barbados, you don't know. Can anybody tell us here what happens in Barbados? Do you have the PCR test, and when you get to Barbados, do you stay 7 days in the hotel, or do you mingle with the people of Barbados on the second or third day? We do not know. So when you're going to make statements from fact. Things that you understand, Madam President. You don't just throw things out there and to try to make St. Lucia look bad. And that is the problem that I have. We always come here and we say things that tries to put St. Lucia in bad light. The time must stop. We must stop doing that. When we are good, we are good. Why are you going to castigate us for saying that we took steps and made St. Lucia the safest country in the Caribbean for almost 6 months? What is wrong with that? You should be the first person to congratulate this government for doing that. We had 28 cases of COVID for almost 4 months. And I'm getting a little excited and agitated because I do not see that what is it that we as St. Lucians are going to be saying about our country. And people are listening. This is going all over the world. There's YouTube and all the other places. People are hearing us. Why don't we give our St. Lucians the kudos that is due? You know? And then you ask about we borrowing monies and so on. We have said, and you know for a fact, that we stopped the tourist boats from coming here. We had to bring our people back. St. Lucia was the first country and the only country that paid for the people to come back. We paid the trip. We assisted other countries. St. Vincent couldn't pay. The Prime Minister of St. Vincent said he was not paying. It's on record. But we took that decision. That is our sisters and brothers. And we paid the plane to drop the persons in St. Vincent to come here. And today you come in here and you're talking about policy. You know? I mean, we purchased our reagents for testing. Okay? We paid the hotels for the accommodation of those persons. And it is there. Medical equipment, $3 million spent. Personal protection equipment, $1.5 million spent. Medical material and supplies for testing, $1 million. Airfare, lodging, and accommodation for the Cuban Medical Brigade, $888,000. Refitting of hospital facilities, $550,000, $500,000. Water tanks, $1.1 million.
Senator, would you quote the source, please?
Oh, my apology. Report on public procurement during the state of emergency, St. Lucia. Do you have a copy of that? Do you have a copy of that? No, I agree. But, I mean, I'm a proud St. Lucian and I'll always be a proud St. Lucian. And when I see people bringing my country down, I will react. Yeah? So, it is there. Okay? We all know what has happened. After 3 or 4 months with 28 cases, no active cases, everybody has recovered. People were going around saying that St. Lucia is COVID-free, calling all the talk shows and saying that I am going as a particular individual, ex-civil servant, but I walk everywhere without my mask. I'm not afraid because there's no COVID in St. Lucia. And you heard it. We passed the emergency laws. Okay? We recognize, it's not Juba. We recognize what was happening. We recognize our people were paying attention. Our people were trying to do the very best to keep that pandemic away. And then it took a political party to break that monopoly. Everything we did in this house, passing the Emergency Act, person said that was too draconian. We should have used the Quarantine Act. Yeah. We talked about the Public Health Act, and we said that was not sufficient, and we brought in the state of emergency, because the state of emergency allows for the Cuban doctors to remain. It allows for a curfew. Okay, we are so creative as St. Lucians. We created 758 and what? 759. Okay, all these things happen. You had persons coming in and talking about at the border of 758 we should put toilets, all sorts of things. You know, we did what we are supposed to do. Things were working. Okay, and then we said, well, okay, after a while things were working. We are going to relax the state of emergency and bring in the protocols that we had during the state of emergency into one bill, the COVID bill. Again, to protect St. Lucians, to continue protecting St. Lucians, to make St. Lucians safe. What happened? We saw what happened in the House, in the lower house. When we were debating the bill, what did they do? They walked out. They walked out so that bill could not have been debated. But luckily for us, we have 11 members in the House, so it was able to pass and come down to us. What happened there was an aberration. An aberration, and history will speak about it. When our children read our history, tears will come through their eyes that we, as politicians, put our political affiliations first before taking care of our people. And they walked out. They didn't appear. They didn't come. All sorts of things happened. Okay? And today we still have 2 acting senators to be able to. And I thank you all for the bravery that you all showed. I know it wasn't easy. I know the amount of ridicule that you all got, the amount of things that were said about you, but you stood firm, and thank you for that.
Senator?
Yes, Madam
Let's get back to the substantive motion.
So, but, Madam Speaker, all this, that's history, you know, I'm just talking about history. And then we saw what happened. We had the famous or infamous match. Protocols were given to you all, but because the act did not pass, okay, you all saw that space, and you knew it was well planned, you know. A couple of weeks before they said they were going to have the match on the 4th. They knew. We knew what was going to happen. So on the 4th there was a match. You all got protocols from the CMO and the Commissioner of Police. 50 people, social distancing, mask wearing, and so on. What happened? They boasted on the market steps. We have 10,000 people. 10,000 people. Okay? And you're telling me that you're responsible? A responsible party? You're a party waiting in the wings to become a government? And that is how you're behaving? What happened? When we are saying whether there's a correlation between the 4th of October and 8 or 10, 9 days after the incubation period of COVID, we saw what happened. There is a spike. For months, we had a flat line. And then all of a sudden, from the 8th, 9th, we went up. Isn't that, I cannot say that's what caused it, but we know what's going on. We know what happened. And we saw the international thing, that President Trump, that everywhere he went, a week after the COVID went up. It's not me, that's the top scientists in the world up there telling you that. Okay, so is there a correlation between that match and the spike in our COVID? We do not know. Okay, we put in policies so that our tourists can come in here very safely. And then we saw what was happening. France closed its borders. And we knew, the Prime Minister knew, that automatically persons were going to race to come to St. Lucia over that weekend. Okay? Race to come to St. Lucia. Closed the fishing industry for a while, and then what happened? What has happened? And we are, as a people, we are always not recognizing and wanting to speak the truth. We know where the people are coming. This is a trade that has been happening between Matlik and St. Lucia for forever. So when we say persons are coming from over there illegally, persons say, no, that's not true, it's from the front door. How many tourists have been sick in St. Lucia? How many? How many? One person was sick. He was sent back. And one other lady who left the area where she was supposed to be quarantined walking down by Grocery, they saw her, the police saw her, arrested her, and shipped her out right away.
Minister,
Yes, Madam
I'm
President.
still cautioning you to get back to the point of this motion,
Madam-
which is the borrowing of capital
But
for
Madam
the
Speaker, that's what I'm saying.
COVID-19.
We
So
had
tie it for my satisfaction.
I agree, Madam Speaker, but President, but we had 28 cases. And this is the reason why we have to come to do more borrowing. We already spent $15 million. So now we had space to be able to hold people. Now we do not have space. We have 150-something active cases. Where do we put those persons? We had the old VH hospital where we moved away from, and now we have to, for just about 6 people we had prepared for. Now we have to prepare for hundreds of people. And then you saw a video on social media that there's water and so on. Immediately the next day you saw some people on top of the roof trying to fix it. We do not have the money. We do not have the fiscal space. And this is why we have to borrow. Okay? And we are getting the money at concessionary rates. In good times, you all couldn't raise any money. In the best of times, you all couldn't raise money. In the worst of times, this Prime Minister, Anand Shastri, can do it. And he can do it. And he must be given his kudos. So, Madam Speaker, I'm getting a little, really excited here because, honestly, this is the lives of our people, our young people, okay? And we have to safeguard it. We have to stop this spread of the COVID. We have to stop it. And the only way we can be able to stop it is by managing the numbers that are out there, do the proper tracing. To do that is money. We do not have the money. And so I recommend that you now change your minds and accept the reality and give support to this bill. I thank you very much, Madam President.
Mine will take a slightly different twist.
Senator Polius.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, I rise to lend my unwavering support to the resolution put forward, seeking approval for the government of St. Lucia to borrow $30 million from the Caribbean Development Bank to facilitate the implementation of policy reform initiatives that are specifically designed to strengthen this government's COVID-19 response and fiscal stability. Madam President, my contribution this afternoon will take a slightly different twist. And I beg of your indulgence, Madam President, to not only add my voice to this ongoing COVID-19 discourse, but to make a strong appeal to every single individual, irrespective of age, gender, social status, religion, political affiliation, to act responsibly and work together to combat this coronavirus war, because it's real. Madam President, the negative impacts of COVID-19 on various sectors of the economy, including health, agriculture, education, tourism, and so on, have placed an enormous financial burden on the country's resources. And there is no doubt about it. We have all acknowledged this undeniable fact. This government has had to spend a substantial amount of money on COVID-19 containment interventions and to provide a support system to those who have been most adversely affected by the pandemic. But you know what some skeptics conclude, Madam President? That this is the government's attempt to make political mileage. And we have heard some of this today, expressed in different ways, in a different language, but all suggest the very same. A typical example is the community feeding program. When this feeding program was implemented by way of distributing food packages as a form of relief to the most disadvantaged in our communities, to those who had lost their jobs, those who complained about having no monies to pay their bills or to put food on the table for their children. I recall vividly having listened to the debate in the lower house that some members of the opposition maliciously labeled it as the government's strategy to buy people and their votes. How absurd, Madam President. I do recognize the desperation of the members of the opposition to be elected. I do. But why should we continue to deceive the citizenry of their perceived hidden political agenda of the United Workers' Party administration? If it's not a political bluff, it is an attempt to buy votes or an attempt to make political mileage, a form of suppression, oppression. Madam President, we are facing a crisis, and I said this before. We are facing unprecedented times. And as I've said, it is the responsibility of this government, or the government of the day. It could have been a St. Lucia Labour Party government. If you were the one in office, it would have been your responsibility to cushion the threats of this pandemic, to provide the support systems that the people who elected you into office needed for them to remain buoyant. Madam President, we have also seen the adverse psychological and emotional impacts of COVID-19 on the most important resource of this country, its people. There are testimonies of increased levels of stress, anxiety, and fear among our people as the number of positive cases spiral and the virus makes its way into several districts on island. These elevated levels of anxiety and fear are further intensified, Madam President, as press releases of Tuesday, November 10, 2020, from the Department of Health and Wellness confirm 2 COVID-19 related deaths on island. Madam President, my heartfelt condolences go out to the families of our 2 St. Lucian brothers. But I want to say to the families that you are not grieving alone. We grieve with you. And Madam President, we are saddened not only by those who may eventually succumb to the coronavirus disease, but by those today who still hold the view that coronavirus does not exist in St. Lucia. St. Lucia has no COVID. It begs the question, Madam President, Are some of our people in oblivion? Or is it that many of us utilize politics as the chief mechanism to make deductions, and very often misleading, Madam President, about the current administration and the manner in which the Prime Minister and his team conducts the business of the country? And to put in measures to safeguard the lives of its people and to keep the economy afloat? Madam President, the statistics tell no fictitious narrative. As of today, November 12th, and according to the Caribbean News Online, over 257,000 confirmed coronavirus cases have been recorded in the Caribbean. Of this number, 224 deaths have been recorded in Jamaica. In Trinidad and Tobago, 11 persons have died as a result of this disease. In Barbados, 7 deaths have been recorded. In Antigua and Barbuda, out of the 131 cases, positive cases recorded, 3 persons have died. And right under our nose, Martinique, our next door neighbor, 37 deaths have been reported. And Madam President, we have now joined these territories with the 2 deaths and the rapid acceleration in the number of confirmed cases. How many more must be tested positive before skeptics believe that this pandemic is no joke and that it is in fact real? Do we have to wait until the death toll in St. Lucia gets to 50, 100, or worse yet, hit home? Or must one of our loved ones die before we can act differently? As I said, Madam President, I want to make an appeal to all of us, all those of us who are listening and viewing, every St. Lucian. This is no way of wishing bad or the worst for our people and country, Madam President. But the truth is, it is time. It is time that we take greater responsibility for our personal safety and that of our fellow brothers and sisters. Madam President, this COVID-19 pandemic has forced us as a nation to modify our lifestyles. The way we work, the way we conduct day-to-day business, the way we dress. And in order to contain this pandemic, as a people, we must exercise strict and consistent adherence to the COVID-19 prevention and control measures already established by the Ministry of Health. It is clear, therefore, Madam President, that this is the surest way to safeguard ourselves and to avoid widespread community transmission. So in closing, Madam President, I wish to reiterate my firm support for the borrowing of $30 million US dollars sought by this government in order to realize tangible progress in our recovery efforts. I make a strong appeal to all service providers, community shop owners, bus drivers, community leaders, families, every single person in this country to comply with the safety protocols and to avoid situations and environments that can put you and others at risk. Madam President, we must keep this pandemic under control to save lives and to keep our economy thriving. And every single individual is called upon to play his or her role. Each one protect one. I thank you, Madam President.
Senator Johnson. Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, I'd like to add my support to authorize the Minister of Finance to borrow the amount of US $30 million from the Caribbean Development Bank to support St. Lucia's COVID-19 response and achieving fiscal stability. Madam President, we are operating in a time when it is not business as usual. COVID has created a situation when we have to operate in a situation of uncertainty. It is business unusual. And the loan for the US $30 million is necessary to support policy reform initiatives in response to COVID-19. COVID has placed serious financial constraints on the government and people of St. Lucia. Revenues are down whilst expenditures are increasing, creating a financial gap and an urgent need to borrow. The loan is necessary to fund our public health response, the social stabilization plan, and the economic recovery and resilience plan. Madam President, this borrowing is necessary to fund the much-needed equipment, supplies, and infrastructure to battle the deadly COVID-19. The cost of operating the OKEU hospital, our respiratory hospital, and the clinics, the COVID-19 command center, and other ancillary services is in excess of $15 million. And if we look at the report on the public procurement during the state of the emergency, so far to date from March this year, 6 months, we have spent $15,389,000. Now, if you look at this amount, and the World Health Organization has stated that COVID will be here at least another 2 years before we can get control of this virus. $80 million is no money. It's a drop in the bucket. The respiratory hospital is currently over capacity. This pandemic has placed increasing pressure on our health sector and crippled our economy and left vast sectors of people unemployed, limited markets for our farmers and fishermen. Our small businesses and vendors are suffering. There is no visible end in sight until a vaccine. Our government is taking proactive measures to ensure our safety and to save lives. Frontline workers and the COVID response teams are putting their lives on the line every day to protect our communities, Madam President. We must not take them for granted and thank them for their sterling commitment and efforts. This funding is to help our people, to help us during these uncertain times, Madam President. Madam President, what I would like to categorically state here is that
this deadly virus, the only weapon we have at the moment is to follow the protocols. Now, I know we all know what the protocols are, but I would like to reiterate adherence to the protocols. And we all know that we need to wear a mask and wear it properly. The mask must cover the nose and mouth properly. If it is not worn properly, persons will not be protected, and the virus will spread, let's face it. Sanitize and wash your hands often. I know we all know it, but I would like to reiterate it to the people of St. Lucia. Stay at home. If you are not able to work from home, please, when you leave work, go home straight. Do not congregate. Stay away from crowds or mass crowd events. Your life and the lives of your loved ones are more important. To date, we have had 2 deaths. We didn't want that in St. Lucia, but we have had 2 deaths now. For the last 6 months, we had no deaths in this country. Practice social distancing, at least 3 to 6 feet. It has been proven that these measures reduce the risk of transmission. Do not be naive. COVID-19 is a reality in St. Lucia. We need to stay safe at all times. Madam Speaker, if we adhere to these basic protocols, this will help minimize the burden on the state and less borrowing. So if we can all agree to this and everybody practice the disciplines, then we will be on a better road to recovery. So Madam President, I would like to add my approval once again for the necessary funding in this fight for the life of humanity to save our lives against COVID-19. Thank you.
Senator Lee.
Good afternoon, Madam President. Good afternoon, fellow senators. Madam President, I wish once again to express appreciation to our Governor General, His Excellency, to Emmanuel Neville Snack, for affording me the opportunity to represent the people of St. Lucia as an independent senator. Now, as everyone is aware, Senator Mauricio Thomas suffered a tremendous loss, and I wish to add my sincere condolences. Madam President, this motion seeks to authorize the Minister of Finance to borrow $30 million from the Caribbean Development Bank to finance the implementation of policy reform initiatives designed to support St. Lucia's COVID-19 crisis response and achieving fiscal stability. As one interested in the health and welfare of my fellow St. Lucians, I have no choice but to support this motion. It will be very difficult not to lend my support, given what we are currently facing with this COVID-19 pandemic. Madam President, this is my second stint as a temporary senator. My first was on October 2nd, 2020, when the COVID-19 Prevention and Control Bill was passed. And that was approximately 6 months ago. Madam President, a great deal has occurred between then, 6 weeks ago, sorry, 6 weeks ago, thank you, 6 weeks ago. Madam President, a great deal has occurred between then and now. On October 2nd, 2020, we had recorded 27 cases of COVID-19. Today, November 12, 2020, the number of cases has ballooned to 156. We recorded 8 new cases today. Madam President, you would recall that the first case was reported here on March 13th, 2020. In essence, for a period of 29 weeks, we recorded 27 cases. Yet, within a period of 6 weeks, we have recorded 129 cases and 2 deaths. This is worrying, and I have been asking myself what caused this explosion, but I cannot find the answer. Madam President, I wish to take this opportunity to extend condolences to the relatives and friends of the 2 gentlemen who have departed this life due to COVID-19, as has been reported. $30 million is a great deal of money which we have to pay back. And according to the motion, it will be used to implement policy reform initiatives with respect to COVID-19. However, if we do not take responsibility for our own health, for our own actions, no amount of initiatives will assist with combating this deadly virus. We must behave responsibly, and we need to change our habit of congregating in the bars, in the rum shops, and having parties. We need to say no when we are coaxed into participating in activities which might impact our health. We cannot afford to be complacent. We have to take responsibility for our actions. And the wearing of masks, as has been said before, the washing of hands, and the other protocols, as outlined by the Ministry of Health, must be adhered to. Let it not be the case of the self-fulfilling prophecy, where we say government is doing nothing to control the spread of the pandemic, then we behave in ways which would cause us to be infected, and then we end up saying, I had told you so, the government is doing nothing. We need to accept responsibility for our behaviors. Some people are still not taking this pandemic seriously and believe that other people will be infected, not them. This pandemic is not a hoax. It is real, and it is deadly. The policy reform initiatives are designed to keep us safe and to ensure a measure of fiscal stability. We have to play our part to ensure the success of these initiatives. There's a list we could do. Madam President, I'll be very brief, but I wish to end by saying, please remain safe. Every single one of us. Thank you, Madam President.
Honorable Minister responsible for Culture and Creative Industries.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, I just believe it would be remiss of me not to stand to endorse the resolution to borrow this money at this point in time, because COVID is real. And we've heard from the senators before me with respect to the depth and the seriousness of the issues around COVID. But what I want to place on record is that for those of us who are more enlightened in the society, I think for us, COVID has really been a test of leadership. And we see those who are responsible and we see those who are irresponsible, you know, with respect to the way we operate and we work through this COVID environment. So all we ask is for our citizens to be disciplined, to be able to manage themselves, you understand? Because while the state can do so much, each individual has that responsibility to play. And so we've had excellent leadership as a government, as a country, throughout this COVID period. I think the Prime Minister has done a remarkable job in terms of leading the team from the onset, recognizing that we did not have the hospital. We opened OKEU, we opened the respiratory hospital, we had a state of emergency to be able to make things happen, you know, so people understand, you know, that this is serious business. So there's no St. Lucian who can place on record and say that they did not know about COVID or they did not know what COVID was. COVID is real. We've had the information across all the media that we've all been exposed to. And so what we ask is for St. Lucians to take the responsibility for themselves. Manage yourself. And if we manage ourselves, and something that a lot of people are not able to do, to manage themselves, and we see it every day in our social services and across St. Lucia, people are not able to manage me. They're not able to manage themselves. And that's all we ask. Manage yourselves with the basic protocols to be able to make it happen for yourself and your family. That's all we ask. And for those who are saying we should sit and wait and watch and see how the world is turning with COVID, not this government. We don't believe in sitting and waiting. We believe in taking action, you understand, and working towards realizing the goals that we have based on the information, the data that is coming before us. We're not sitting and waiting. We're not procrastinating. But we believe that there's some basic things that we need to do, and we are doing it in the interest of our community and our citizens in this country. And you know, as I sat there and listened to the passion from all of the senators, you know, it behoves us as a nation to take responsibility for ourselves. We must do it for ourselves. No one can do it for us. No one can do it for us. Because everybody has their own agenda. And so what we need to do is each have our own agenda to ensure that we follow the protocols and do what is right by ourselves first. You understand? And then our families. Because if we love ourselves, that's when we'll be able to extend the love, you know, to the others. That's all I have to say, Madam, on this. Thank you.
Senator Jean-Pierre.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, as I rise to give support to this motion, I would like leave of you to, one, welcome our new opposition senators, and also our independent senators. Apparently, they are called to be put into action more often as they themselves would have realized. So I refer to them as the COVID senators. Madam President, let me take this opportunity through you to express my condolences to Senator Mauricia Thomas Francis. It is never an easy thing for a parent to bury a child. Fortunately, I have not found myself in this situation, but I know it's not easy. Even in the discuss that I had with her on the telephone, I could have seen that she has completely lost her voice. Speedy recovery also to Senator Adrian Auger, and let us hope that he can join us soon. Madam President, I take this opportunity to appeal to my community, the Auger-Labrie constituency in particular, as we found ourselves to be the epicenter of this dangerous disease. Unfortunately, in a matter of weeks, Library came from 0 to be at the top of the charts in St. Lucia. And that is serious because I'm a Liberian, and it means that I'm in danger myself. I live in Library. I sleep in Library. I do everything in Library. So I live in Library. So let me tell our people, please, you've heard the cry. Let us be safe. Let us practice the protocol. Also, I would wish to tell my people, please do not stigmatize. We tend to have a tendency always to point fingers. No one knows who is responsible and who has COVID. But the record will show us, Madam President, that COVID seems to love congregation. So we see many activities as reported by the international press. After the George Floyd march, COVID increased. After President Trump, whatever he had in North Carolina, COVID increased thereafter. So let us be responsible people, and let us try and curb and most likely stop those mass crowd events totally. I must say, in driving around St. Lucia and driving around the Library constituency in particular, I am pleased to see that our people are taking the 9 o'clock closing of bars very seriously, and I must say that I don't see people on the road that late when I happen to find myself on the road late myself. So I know our people are taking it seriously. But the issue at hand is COVID is with us. We are living in perilous times. There's no question about it. And we need to take the action that we need to take to save our lives and those of our family. I would also love, Madam President, if you give me the leave to express my condolences to the family of 2 gentlemen which I happen to interact with from a very young age. Mr. Wilkie Latcher and Mr. Oliver Scott Jr., which we all used to call Scotty. In 1977 or 76, Mr. Latcher taught me at Gifford Secondary School. I remembered he was transferred to Gifford Secondary School under some circumstances which need not to be discussed here today. And that was the time I got to know Mr. Latcher. I always look at Mr. Latcher as a gentle giant. I was able to, I think the last time I rubbed shoulders with him was at a mediation where Southern Taxi Association had a matter in the courts. I cannot remember meeting him thereafter. Oliver Scott Jr. I met when I was attending for secondary school when I played trials for under-19 cricket, and well, Scotty at the time was everything cricket was in St. Lucia. Be it president, be it secretary, be it selector, and from there on, I developed a bond with him until time immemorial, he himself being a strong supporter and even General Secretary of the Labour Party, and myself growing up in a Labour Party background, we rub shoulders very often. And not to say, sometimes he would always tell me, let's fire one. So at the end of the day, it is somebody I knew pretty well throughout my younger days, and I wish those 2 gentlemen families that they would, it's a great loss, and unfortunately we also have another family that is grieving over COVID. Much has been said here today about him. One death, whether it's through COVID or not, is always too many. And today, we are seeing ourselves in St. Lucia. The harsh reality is we have lost St. Lucians on St. Lucia. We lost St. Lucians overseas through COVID, but it is hitting home right here, and it is very serious. This resolution, Madam President, will assist us and the government of St. Lucia and the people for the support that they are looking for. Madam President, Victoria Hospital was already an eyesore, and that is why OKEU came into being. I do not know how we expect Victoria being made a respiratory hospital would be an A1 facility overnight. It is a fact that Victoria was already an eyesore. This is why OKEU had to be commissioned. And with nothing done, don't expect that Victoria, with some fairy wand, will just turn an A1 facility. And this is why I stand in support of this resolution, that it will be able to give the government of St. Lucia the required resources whereby we can continue to manage this pandemic. Because we must, as a people, as a country, we have to do what needs to be done. We are living in dire times, and we need to continue. I need not to repeat what have been said here by my fellow senators, but I guess, St. Lucia, you have heard their pleas. You are hearing us. You are hearing the CMO. Kudos to those on the front line. Kudos to my Minister of Health, our leader of government business. I think they have performed credibly and excellently under the circumstances. There come the time that we, as St. Lucians, forget about whether you are UWP or whether Labour. COVID does not know neither UWP nor Labour. COVID will kill anyone in its path. So it really doesn't matter whether you are UWP or Labour. We need to act responsibly as St. Lucians, and let us arrest this situation. Madam President, I give my 100% support. I thank you.
Honorable Leader of Government Business.
Madam President, I beg to move a motion to suspend Standing Order number 9.3 to allow the Senate to sit between the hours of 6 and 7:30 p.m.
Senators, the question is that Standing Order 9 be invoked to allow the Senate to sit past 6 p.m. I now put the question. As many as are of that opinion, say aye. As many as are of a contrary opinion, say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Honorable Leader of Government Business.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, I will again try to provide some answers. Senator, Leader of Opposition Business asked why don't we follow in Barbados' footsteps or something to that effect, Madam President, about testing. And I just want to inform him that we test, we double test, we triple test. When we have a suspected case or somebody present themselves, we test. If the person is placed in quarantine, 7 days later, we test. Unless, of course, the person becomes symptomatic, we test as soon as that happens. So whether it's 4 days, 5 days, 6 days, we test again. If a person tests, when a person tests positive, we do a second test to ensure that we did not get a false positive. And we keep the people, when we isolate people, they are in isolation for 14 days. We test them after the 7th day, and if they are still positive, they remain in the facility where they continue to get care, and we keep testing until they test negative, and then they are allowed to leave. And there is follow-up in community for these people after they have tested negative. And then the negative test, we retest to ensure that it is not a false negative. So we do test quite a bit, Senator. It's just not after 4 days, it's after 7 days, in most cases, unless the person is symptomatic. In terms of our ratings, and I heard you speak about the region, we were among the top countries in the region when we state that we are number 1. That was in the region and among the top 8 in the world. So, and our ratings, of course, is not done by St. Lucia. We do not rate our own selves, right? These ratings are usually done by WHO or international agencies, and then we use them to guide our policy development. So we know we were doing something right, given that we were where we found ourselves, and we continued to improve on the protocols. I heard about the doors, and I said this was not spoken in this house, but our concern at the Ministry of Health is, regardless of what door you came from, to present yourself if you are sick, if you don't feel well, if you did not come in with a COVID test, so that you can get tested. We need to close all the doors, back and front. Madam President, we do not do a rapid test. We do not use the rapid test in St. Lucia. We do the PCR test, which is more reliable than the rapid test, which is about 70% reliable. We do not necessarily compare ourselves to Barbados because, and my fellow senator gave some information on Barbados, because of course our Prime Minister was the one selected to lead the charge in the region when the region was looking at reopening our borders. So while I know that the opposition do not like to give him any credit or give credit where credit is due, St. Lucia was able to come out as good as we were at the time because of the leadership of the Honorable Alan Michael Chasney, our Prime Minister. He was the one leading the charge, providing the necessary finances, ensuring that the Ministry of Finance make it available so that the Ministry of Health could carry out the people's work. Madam President, we hear a lot of issues coming out of the opposition, but when the opposition is given the opportunity to participate, Madam President, they walk out, or they do not show up at all. And I know that we are going to be told that we keep saying that and repeating that, let us move on. But we cannot continue to make those mistakes. We cannot continue to behave like little spoiled children at a time like this, Madam President. And then at the end of the day, call for people in the country or for the government to overlook that type of reckless behavior. We cannot have a march with thousands of people, we claim, and at the end of the day, expect everybody to turn a blind eye. When all the protocols are indicating that COVID is at its best when you are in a mass crowd environment or in large numbers and so on. And these protocols do not come out of thin air. There is a lot of thought, a lot of experience based on what we have been experienced from March of this year that goes into the formulation of these protocols. The CMO is recognized in our Constitution. That is a constitutional position. And when people go out of their way, Madam President, to attack the country's chief medical officer, I believe because we say CMO, it doesn't seem to mean much to a lot of people. Our chief medical officer has the authority to shut down this country. So, Madam President, it is all these kinds of reckless talk that causes the other people in the country who are following these people who are supposed to be leading them, that cause people to disregard the protocols and bring us here, Madam President, so that we have to borrow more money for us to finance COVID as well as our fiscal policies. So there is a direct correlation with a lot of the borrowing that we are doing, with what is going on the ground, the spikes that we are having, the behavior of some of our reckless leaders, and we cannot overlook that, Madam President. Madam President, let me say here today, if it walks like a duck, swim like a duck, and quack like a duck, Madam President, it is a duck. And we can make a direct correlation. The Ministry of Health can make a direct correlation. This is not hearsay. The correlation between community spread and that match is very, very high.
Madam
Very
President,
positive.
I rise on a point of order. I believe that earlier on,
What's the point of order, Senator?
37.5, Madam President, the member is imputing improper motives, and I'm referring to a previous attempt to correlate the march, and in this case, I will have to include myself as a member of the House who was a part of the march, and she is attempting to make a correlation, as she did earlier, and you intervene in her rebuttal this time. Now, I believe she's trying to use, to change the wording, but the message is the same. Correlation is understood, march is understood, and COVID community spike. I think earlier on, Madam President, you did intervene, but I see the Minister of Health, the Honorable Senator, being very irresponsible to attempt to do that again. And I will not sit there and allow that to continue, Madam President. I think it is irresponsible, and it is gross misconduct in the Honorable House.
Senator, the Minister on this occasion is in fact stating that the Ministry is in a position to make the correlation. That is not something for me to determine. If the Minister makes that statement, the Minister must know how she has concluded that. And if you wish to question the statement, you yourself must know how you refute it.
And so, Madam President, if that is the case, if the Minister would like, if the Minister speaking on behalf of the Ministry believes that the Ministry can make the correlation, it would be well advised that the correlation be made, and not just statements like this in the Honorable House.
Honorable Leader of Government Business.
Madam President, we can make the correlation, Madam President. We have made it. Prior to the march, we had 27 cases in 6 months. After the march, from the incubation, during the incubation period, after the match, it spiked. What more correlation do you need? Did we have any other activity, like my fellow senator asked, to
Leader
create
of
a
Opposition
situation?
Business.
Madam President, I rise on the same point of order. Now that the Honorable Senator is indicating, by way of example, that before the match there was a specific number, and since the match, the number spiked. It is clear to me and to anyone who can understand basic English that she's using that statistic to make a correlation herself. And I believe that this is misleading and that this should not continue, Madam President.
Madam President, I will move on.
Senator, I don't think she's even suggesting. She's making it clear that that is what she believes to be the case. So there is nothing that I, as a presiding officer, can state. If you believe it to be different, you need to say so. Proceed, Honorable Leader of Government Business.
Thank you, Madam President. And Madam President, somebody needs to take responsibility. And this is where I'm going with this. The Ministry of Health is working too hard. The frontline workers, Madam President, are working too hard for us to wash away all the gains that they had made up to that point. And today, Madam President, our hospitals are overflowing. The respiratory hospital is full. We have moved to turning point. We are requesting money every time we come here because we need to finance the efforts that some people are jeopardizing by their actions every day. Madam President, we are being called irresponsible by making those statements. But it is the opposition that was irresponsible to have a match during a COVID pandemic. All the protocols are there throughout the world saying do not, no mass crowd events, and so on. Madam President, they walked out of the lower house when the COVID-19 bill was being debated.
Again on a point of order.
Leader of Opposition Business.
Thank you, Madam President. I believe, again, the member is doing the very same thing that she just did in stating, but specifically stating that the opposition had a march during a state of emergency. The opposition had permission from the police commissioner and adhered to all the conditions that were placed. There was a plan submitted. The opposition presented a plan that if it was not acceptable, the police commissioner would not have given permission. So to suggest that there was just a march, as if it was some arbitrary event, it was authorized, duly authorized by the police commissioner. So we went through the channels. And at that time, Madam President, there was nothing to suggest that what was done was in any way contrary to what was acceptable. I think it's misleading, Madam President. And earlier on, I think the member attempted to go down that road. You ruled on it, you cautioned, she stopped, but she's going back there, Madam President. She's probably using a little bit more guile, but I think the intention is the same. And we must not be deceived in this honorable house. This is deception.
My recollection on the first ruling was that it was irrelevant to the particular resolution. That's why she was stopped. On this occasion, Honorable Leader of Government Business, please proceed and desist from continuing on the topic of the state of emergency, since I agree with the Senator that permissions were granted. In terms of the statement made by the Senator, which were not detailed, permission was granted. Proceed.
Thank you, Madam President. I did not say during a state of emergency. I said during a COVID pandemic. So, Madam President, I will continue. Because permission was given for the march with protocols. Clearly, the protocol was broken because we see on public television where the St. Lucia Labour Party said they had thousands of people at the march. It is not us that said that, Madam President. They are the ones who said it. They have confirmed that they had more than 500 people at that match. And it ought not to have been that way, Madam President. We have COVID protocols where now we have, it's no wonder they walked off on the legislation. Because that is where we see the policy coming out. Legislation. And where were they to defend for their own people? Where were they to protect the interests of those thousands of people who voted for them? They were not there. But what do? They wait for a window, and then they break the policies. They break all the protocols. And what is happening now, Madam President, in a developed country, they would take that correlation, and somebody would have to own up and take responsibility for what happened here. And I am very passionate about it, Madam President, because I see how hard we work at the Ministry of Health to contain this virus.
Leader of Opposition Business.
Thank you, Madam President. I'm hoping that this is the last time I will rise. I recall that you've just advised the member to move away from this, and I think this is exactly what is still happening. I don't know for what reason, but even after you have advised, it is continuing. And I hope I will not have to stand up again on that same point of order for that same purpose.
I did not stop the Honorable Leader of Government Business because she provided further details which, according to her, were correct. Proceed, Leader of Government Business.
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you. Maybe if I was not the Minister of Health, Madam President, I would not have taken that so seriously. But I know how hard we work in that ministry. I know how hard my Chief Medical Officer worked, Madam President, in that ministry. And for people to just, be careless about, the way they act and disregard the protocols that we set, Madam President, it is unacceptable. Madam President, the Leader of Opposition Business also asked us to quantify the expenditure that we are coming to this House to finance. And the Parliament provided us with a document that was given to the Parliament by the Prime Minister for the Ministry of Finance. And that report, I believe every senator here got a copy of that report. And what he's asking, Madam President, and of course, Senator Francis has already pointed out some of the costing inside of that report. This is a report that shows our expenditure for the period of time from the beginning of COVID to October of this year. And all the information is inside of that report, Madam President. Should he require more information, the Ministry of Health will be able to provide that information. He simply has to reach out. And I believe the Senator got the report from the Parliament. Madam President, at this point, I believe I have exhausted all the concerns that were raised. And again, I want to say that this bill has my full support, and I submit it to the Honorable House for support from my fellow senators.
Senators, the question is that Parliament authorizes the Minister of Finance to borrow an amount of $30 million from the Caribbean Development Bank, consisting of a special funds resources portion in the sum of $10,800,000 and an ordinary capital resources portion in the amount of $19,200,000 for the purpose of financing the implementation of policy reform initiatives designed to support St. Lucia's COVID-19 crisis response and achieving fiscal stability, be it for expiration of 5 years following the date of the loan agreement, or B, a later due date specified in writing by the Caribbean Development Bank. 2, interest is payable quarterly at a rate of 1% per annum on the amount of the special funds resources portion withdrawn and outstanding. B, in the case of the ordinary capital resources portion, 1, the loan is repayable in 40 equal or approximately equal and consecutive quarterly installments on each due date of the first day of January, the first day of April, the first day of July, and the first day of October of each year, commencing on A. the first due date after the expiration of 2 years following the date of the loan agreement, or B, a later due date specified in writing by the Caribbean Development Bank. 2, interest is payable quarterly at a rate of 4.1% per annum on the amount of the ordinary capital resources portion withdrawn and outstanding. 3, a commitment charge, A, is payable quarterly at a rate of 1% per annum on the amount of the ordinary capital resources portion unwithdrawn. B, accrues from the 16th day following the date of the loan agreement. I now put the question. As many as are of that opinion, say aye. As many as are of a contrary opinion, say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Motion 6. Honorable Leader of Government Business.
Madam President, I beg to move the following motion standing in my name. Finance Administration Act resolution to authorize the Minister of Finance to guarantee borrowing by the St. Lucia Air and Seaports Authority from a syndicate of banks led by the Bank of St. Lucia Limited to finance the Huanora International Airport Redevelopment Project. Whereas it is provided under Section 41 of the Finance Administration Act, Cap 1501, that a guarantee involving a financial liability is not binding on government unless the Minister of Finance grants the guarantee in accordance with an enactment or with the prior approval of Parliament by a resolution of Parliament. And whereas it is further provided under Section 42 of the Finance Administration Act, Cap 1501, that any obligation arising from a guarantee given in accordance with Section 41 is a debt charge, and all debt charges for which the government is liable shall be charged on and paid out of the consolidated fund. And whereas Parliament approved the guarantee of a loan in the amount of $202,500,000 EC dollars for the purpose of financing the Huanora International Airport Redevelopment Project by the St. Lucia Air and Seaports Authority from a syndicate of banks led by the Bank of St. Lucia Limited under the Finance Administration Act resolution of Parliament to authorize the Minister for Finance to guarantee borrowing by the St. Lucia Air and Seaports Authority from a syndicate of banks led by the Bank of St. Lucia Limited to finance the Huanora International Airport Redevelopment Project, published as statutory instrument number 124 of 2019. And whereas the interest on the loan is payable monthly at a rate of 5.5% per annum during the 60-month moratorium period and not semi-annually as provided in statutory instrument number 124 of 2019, and consequently statutory instrument number 124 of 2019 must be revoked. And whereas the Minister of Finance considers it necessary to guarantee a loan in the amount of EC $202,500,000 for the purpose of financing the Huanora International Airport Redevelopment Project by the St. Lucia Air and Seaports Authority from a syndicate of banks led by the Bank of St. Lucia Limited as follows. A, Bank of St. Lucia Limited, $58,900,000 EC dollars. B, First National Bank of St. Lucia Limited, $54,500,000 EC dollars. C, Grenada Cooperative Bank Limited, $40,100,000 EC dollars. D, Antigua Commercial Bank Limited, EC, $24,500,000. E, Eastern Caribbean Amalgamated Bank, $24,500,000 EC dollars. And whereas the loan is repayable over a period of 20 years with a 60-month moratorium on the principal payments with interest only paid, and whereas the interest is payable quarterly from the date of the initial disbursement of the loan. A, at a rate of 5.5% per annum during the 60-month moratorium period. B, at a rate of not exceeding 5% per annum at the expiry of the 60-month moratorium period and the commencement of blended payments including interest and principal. And whereas the blended interest rate will be provided semi-annually, which will reflect the relative proportion of cash and government guarantee security provided, and the interest is payable at A, 4.5% on the cash security provided, and B, 5% on the government guarantee security provided. And whereas the blended payments, including principal and interest, to be paid monthly, and whereas a commitment fee of 0.75% is payable on the disbursement of the loan, be it resolved that Parliament revokes the Finance Administration Act, resolution of Parliament to authorize the Minister for Finance to guarantee borrowing by the St. Lucia Air and Seaports Authority from a syndicate of banks led by the Bank of St. Lucia Limited to finance the Uwanora International Airport Redevelopment Project, published as statutory instrument number 124 of 2019. Be it further resolved that Parliament authorizes the Minister of Finance to guarantee a loan in the amount of $202,500,000 EC dollars for the purpose of financing the Uwanora International Airport Redevelopment Project by the St. Lucia Air and Seaports Authority from a syndicate of banks led by the Bank of St. Lucia Limited as follows. A, Bank of St. Lucia Limited, $58,900,000 EC dollars. B, First National Bank, St. Lucia Limited, $54,500,000 EC dollars. C, Grenada Cooperative Bank Limited, $40,100,000 EC dollars. Antigua Commercial Bank Limited, $24,500,000 EC dollars. E, Eastern Caribbean Amalgamated Bank, $24,500,000 EC dollars. Be it further resolved that A, the loan is repayable over a period of 20 years with a 60-month moratorium on the principal payments with interest only paid. B, the interest is payable quarterly from the date of the initial disbursement of the loan. 1, at a rate of 5.5% per annum during the 60-month moratorium period. 2, at a rate of not exceeding 5% per annum at the expiry of the 60-month moratorium period, and the commencement of blended payments including interest and principal. C, the blended interest rate will be provided semi-annually, which will reflect the relative proportion of cash and government guarantee security provided, and the interest is payable at 1, 4.5% on the cash security provided, and 2, 5% on the government guarantee security provided. D, the blended payments including principal and interest to be paid monthly. E, a commitment fee of 0.75% is payable on the disbursement of the loan. This resolution, Madam President, seeks approval of the Senate for the government of St. Lucia to borrow a loan of $202,500,000 Eastern Caribbean dollars from a syndicate of banks led by the Bank of St. Lucia for the purpose of financing the Uwanora International Airport Redevelopment Project on behalf of the St. Lucia Air and Seaports Authority, better known as SLASPA. While this is a guarantee and not a loan, Madam President, if for any reason government becomes liable, the debt may be charged on and paid out of the consolidated fund, and as such it requires the approval of this Honorable House. Madam President, a previous resolution for the same purpose was approved in this Honorable House in 2019 and was published in statutory instrument number 124 of 2019. However, the interest terms was not clearly stipulated. While statutory instrument number 124 allowed for the interest on the loan to be payable quarterly at a rate of 5.5 per annum from the date of disbursement of the loan to the end of the grace period of 5 years, it required that interest be paid semi-annually at a rate of up to 5% per annum at the end of the moratorium for the remaining life of the loan. It also did not state that blended interest payments would be determined semi-annually at the end of the moratorium period, and that there would be subsequent payments of both interest and principal after the moratorium comes to an end. Therefore, Madam President, this request is to amend and replace statutory instrument number 125 of 2019, as it is not consistent with the current terms and conditions agreed to by the parties. Consequently, Madam President, the request before this Honorable House is to have statutory instrument number 124 of 2019 revoked and replaced with a new statutory instrument reflecting the amended terms and conditions as presented in this resolution. Madam President, I present this resolution for approval of this Honorable House. Thank you.
Senators, the question is that Parliament revokes the Finance Administration Act, Resolution of Parliament, to authorize the Minister for Finance to guarantee borrowing by the St. Lucia Air and Seaports Authority from a syndicate of banks led by the Bank of St. Lucia Limited to finance the Hiwanora International Airport redevelopment project, published as statutory instrument number 124 of 2019. Be it further resolved that Parliament authorize the Minister of Finance to guarantee a loan in the amount of EC $202,500,000 for the purpose of financing the Hiwanora International Airport redevelopment project by the St. Lucia Air and Seaports Authority from a syndicate of banks led by the Bank of St. Lucia Limited as follows. A. Bank of St. Lucia Limited, $58,900,000. B. First National Bank of St. Lucia Limited, $54,500,000. C. Grenada Cooperative Bank Limited, EC $40,100,000. D. Antigua Commercial Bank Limited, EC $24,500,000. E. Eastern Caribbean Amalgamated Bank, EC $24,500,000. Be it resolved that A. The loan is repayable over a period of 20 years with a 60-month moratorium on the principal payments with interest only paid. B. The interest is payable quarterly from the date of the initial disbursement of the loan. 1. At a rate 5.5% per annum during the 60-month moratorium period. 2. At a rate of not exceeding 5% per annum at the expiry of the 60-month moratorium period and the commencement of blended payments including interest and principal. C. The blended interest rate will be provided semi-annually, which will reflect the relative proportion of cash and government guarantee security provided, and the interest is payable at 1. 4.5% on the cash security provided, and 2. 5% on the government guarantee security provided. D. The blended payments, including principal and interest, to be paid monthly. E. A commitment fee of 0.75% is payable on the disbursement of the loan. Senator Sinclair.
Thank you once again, Madam President. Regarding the Hiwanora International redevelopment project and the guarantee being sought here, I would like through you, Madam President, to draw the Senate's attention to relevant considerations involving the quantum, the timing, and the wisdom of this particular motion by way of our debate here today to approve a guarantee to borrow almost $250 million. But like the Senator Ferdinand before me, I want you to remember what he said. He said, do not believe that your way is the only way. Such a serious undertaking is not akin to playing a game of Monopoly, Madam President, where the objective is to acquire most of the glitzy pieces of real estate on the game board, such as Parkway and Broadwalk. Madam President, this is a serious gamble.
Some on the other side may rebut that such a strong statement to make in view of the fact that our arrival hall and our carousel are desperately in need of an upgrade. But due to our current national socio-economic situation, I will go on to present the case, Madam President, which I trust you will find compelling. The idea of presently investing $202.5 million in the HIA redevelopment project is deemed, at least at this time, to be grossly misplaced when compared to the opportunity cost of upgrading our respiratory facilities, which we just spoke about, which we all know are presently in a state of disrepair, and providing so many other safety nets which have become critical. The other approach that we can take is that we can reduce the scope of works. We all know that we need a new airport, a new facility which will enhance the ability for us to receive more tourists, if the tourists ever come. But the other approach is to reduce the scope of works, thereby reducing the capital outlay that we will require for that project. But just let's ask ourselves, can we humanly consider the attendant stress brought to bear on these unfortunate patients and grace them with a more decent place of accommodation? The wide circulation of the appalling conditions thereat doesn't have to be revisited here, Madam President. Secondly, can we at least undertake, before stepping on the accelerator, a sensitivity analysis to examine the changing scenarios within the global tourism environment, which must have been so instructive in forecasting the pertinent revenue streams in the first place? A business model reflective of almost unlimited frequent flyer miles certainly does not obtain today. Madam President, the use of large construction-related infrastructural projects can conventionally achieve two objectives. One, they can sometimes be used to stimulate or jumpstart a national economy. And two, they can be used to improve and upgrade or augment the status of the national plant, and together with the various socio-economic benefits that would be derived therefrom, such as increased traffic flows, improved traffic flows, leading to increased productivity, enhanced safety features, etc. in the case of road networks. In the case of this HIA proposed expansion upgrading project, the calculus shown should have more closely examined, should have been more closely examined. It is certain to be characterized by a trained professional as being very plant or equipment intensive, with very low or relatively low local input anticipated. Furthermore, completion of this project will most likely be achieved via mass importation.
Honorable Leader of Government Business.
Madam President, on a point of elucidation, Madam President, if I may, this resolution has already passed in this honorable house. All we are trying to do is to this resolution has already passed.
Point of order, on a point of elucidation.
Yes, Madam President.
Senator is still standing.
I'm awaiting advice from it. No, I wish to continue.
The Honorable Leader of Government Business stood on a point of order. Do you remain standing or do you sit?
No,
I mean, on a point of elucidation, do you stand or will you sit?
I'll sit and wait.
Madam President, I just wish to point out that this, I'm not sure if, because the Senator was not in the House when this resolution was passed, but it is just a correction that we are making to include some more information. Yes, you can, but...
Senator Sinclair. Proceed.
As I was saying, Madam President, I characterize the project as being one that will be achieved via mass importation and duty-free at that, meaning that little or not much revenue will be derived from the project for customs and excise surcharges. Materials in cladding, which is the facade of the building, alu-bond or similar, fittings and fixtures, commercial grade and commercial that will have to be imported. The local materials supplied to this particular project will be confined to what is required in the execution of what we call wet trades, such as concrete, wall rendering, floor screeding, etc. This would happen mainly and almost only because the cost of importing these materials will prove to be prohibitive due to the gross weight. The components in a project like this, such as piling, it has already been assigned to a foreign company, primarily because we don't have this expertise on island. You would require pile caps and pile heads and piling machines to drive these piles. And this project, from the best of my research, would require about 320 piles. Then we have massive importation input in the area of MEPs, which are mechanical, electrical, plumbing required in the service installations. All of these things would be imported. A well-rated elevator supplier such as Otis will almost certainly require factory workers to come down to St. Lucia to actually install, in order that they in turn can underwrite the function of these pieces of equipment and provide guarantees and warranties for these projects. So, Madam President, without being too expansive on the technical side, suffice to say that in this hard Corona guava season, this is arguably too much unnecessary risk to undertake when everyone is scrambling to be gainfully employed and things are not looking up but rather are looking down. Alors, Madame President, en temps où Covid zala, ça c'est trop wis pour point. Le tout le monde qui a fait travail et puis bagay tellement mayok à présent. With this, Madam President, I will bring my contribution to an end on my maiden visit to this honorable Senate floor and rest my case. But long live the resilient St. Lucian people, long live the party of bread, freedom and justice. And I thank you immensely once again, Madam President, for your indulgence here today. I will forever be grateful.
Senators, Senator Jean-Pierre.
Madam President, I would like to be as brief as possible. The resolution before us, Madam President, is not to borrow further amounts. It is just a question of a replacement. So, I believe Hiwanora was valid in 2019. It is still valid today. The question is, you will hear from the opposite side that everybody is admitting that there is a need for improvement at Hiwanora. Madam President, you cannot build an airport for a year. You need to build an airport for at least to be relevant for at least 20 years. So it makes absolutely no sense to tell me. I always like to say I'm a resident of Hiwanura Airport. From 1978, as a young fireman, I was based at Hiwanura Airport up to a day like today. I'm a taxi driver at Hiwanura Airport. So I know the ins and outs of Hiwanura. And every time the word Hiwanura is mentioned, you know, I cannot stay quiet, because this is where my bread and butter. My bread and butter is at Hiwanura. And the truth still remains, if it was a national jeopardy to borrow to continue the existence of Hiwanura Airport, I would not have supported it. But I am convinced that so as the opposition, that Hiwanura needs upgrading. And the question is, can we upgrade Hiwanura and in a year's time it becomes irrelevant? I think the current proposal for a reclassification, a total new terminal building taxiway is acceptable. I think the issue at hand with the opposition is whether it's a PPP or whether it is this or that. The question is, it does not matter what road you take to go to heaven. Once you take in the people there, this is what's important. I guess everybody decides what direction and what road they travel. But the aim is to take us there anyway. And I think I give my wholehearted support to this bill, this resolution, sorry, when it was first presented. I will still continue to support Hiwanura. And for that matter, are you telling me that if you have taken a loan and a financial institution give you a loan to construct a house or to buy a cell phone, that you can take it and do anything else with it? The question is, are we saying that the banks that sat to look at the proposal as presented by SLASPA did not do their due diligence? Will any bank give a loan, whether it be to a statutory corporation or a government, without doing its due diligence? The bank is in the business of profit, and no bank will approve a loan for anybody, whether it be government or individual, if you are convinced in your mind that it is not the proper thing to do. Madam President, we seem to be casting doom and gloom on St. Lucia and the tourism industry. Subject to correction, I am almost certain that since the reopening in July, that at least 1 million people has come through Hiwanura. And I say subject to correction, and that can be verified. So our tourism industry is alive and well, and we need to prepare ourselves for the coming years. Whether tourism take off in 3 or 4 or 5 years, this airport reconstruction, which is just about to take off, will not be completed in 2 or 3 years. It will be completed within 2 or 3 years. So for that matter, St. Lucia is preparing itself to receive the new world order in tourism when that will happen. Madam President, I am confident that whatever, well, I'm not a God there, but I believe in what I believe. Madam President, I am certain when I listen to the arguments that Hiranora still remain relevant as it was yesterday, as in today, whatever nexus between all the industries that we are looking at, unless we have a thriving tourism industry. I'm from a farming community. I'm from the community of Bunce, Labrie. I used to farm at some point in time. And I can tell you, my conversation with farmers will tell you what impact the closure of the hotel industry, by extension the tourism industry, had on them. Those who were selling pineapples, those who were selling potatoes, those who were selling whatever. I heard criticisms of fisher folks going to the communities to sell the fish. But I can tell you, Madam President, those fisher folks who used to sell to the Fish Marketing Corporation and then on going to the different hotels, they are more confident now and they are happier now in passing through the communities and to sell the fish and receive their money. I can tell you, in my former life, there were arrangements made between the very same Fish Marketing Corporation and fishing organizations that had to be scrapped because the money is not forthcoming. So we are behaving as if we just arrived. That St. Lucia, all of a sudden, things have turned upside down, and it is only yesterday that the difficulties that we are facing, that we start facing it. In some instances, it might be compounded by COVID, but the state that we are in is not an overnight state. And I am happy and I am contented that even in the pre-COVID period, where we were tourism-wise, I'm involved in tourism, I'm involved in tourism transportation, and I know as a factual statement where we were, and that was indication of the work that has been done, whether by the tourism authority in enabling to market St. Lucia, and that is why I believe that it is the proper direction to go. We cannot scrap agriculture, we cannot scrap fishing, but tourism will be our savior, and this is what will save our fishing industry likewise, our agricultural industry, because it is going to allow us to bring in more people on this island, whereby all the supporting amenities will be able to be supported through the tourism industry. Madam President, too many times we look at tourism as being the man coming from America or the man coming from Europe. Within the Caribbean itself, we have a sustained market. And as stated by the minister, my colleague senator, you can be a tourist in your own country. Start going and take a sulfur bath. When last did we go to the sulfur spring? Let us enjoy the things that the visitors are enjoying here. And let us start locally to propel our tourism industry whilst the visitors are away. But I give my full and wholehearted support, and I continue to support the Hiranora Airport redevelopment project, because I think Hiranora needs a facelift. I thank you.
Leader of Opposition Business.
Thank you, Madam President. I think that might be my last trip to the podium on this side for the evening. I just made an observation. Just remind my colleagues, independent senators, that this podium is also available. It's been a bit underutilized today, so I invite them to probably make use of it the next time. Madam President, I rise to make my contribution to this HIA loan of 220 million. Correctly, it is not the first time that it has been spoken of or brought up, and I think the amendments are being proposed. Madam President, despite that fact, it is clear that this loan does not change the fact that we are going to be adding to our debt profile. The government is guaranteeing the loan, and SLASPA will be is the one taking the loan. But as a guarantor, we still have responsibility should they falter. So we're basically making a commitment as a government that we are prepared to undertake that debt profile. I totally understand the enthusiasm of my colleague senator who just spoke, and he's been very consistent, Madam President, when it comes to issues relating to UNORA, the taxi service. So I completely understand his enthusiasm and his genuine intent to support the bill. But I have to say, Madam President, that there is now, with changing circumstances, although our airport needs attention, we have always agreed on that part. But even then, when we first had discussion on this bill, the opposition had called on the government to rethink the options, and then the options were PPP and not take the loan to add up to our debt stock. But Madam President, some time has passed and circumstances have changed. We are all aware that between then and now, a lot has changed around the world. And I believe that the time has come now for us to ask whether, because of the changed circumstances, that we could not have revisited our position regarding that loan. Whether the government could not have had a rethink and say, listen, we had made a commitment, but now we have a situation where our country's circumstances have changed. We have a situation where the revenue stream, that the premise on which that loan was being taken was, I remembered, clearly stated by leader of government business, the Prime Minister, that we are not borrowing without a revenue stream, a designated revenue stream. And that since you were borrowing, the dedicated revenue stream would have been through the airport development tax. Now, Madam President, although we had issues with that at the time, but right now I believe that this situation is even more serious. I'll move on, but I'll just mention it a little bit later. Madam President, we must realize that we don't reside or we don't exist in this world alone. We are part of a global environment. And what happens in other jurisdictions have implications for what we do. We must remember that in places like the UK, we see that governments have pulled back on capital expenditure. They've pulled back on commitments that they would have made to spend on essentially capital projects. But I suspect that, and that obviously has been predicated by the advent of COVID. Now we sit in this honorable house, we've been here today, and we've all spoken about COVID. We have disagreed on certain things, but I think all of us have agreed that this is a phenomenon that threatens every aspect of our existence. And that because of that COVID situation, that a lot of things have to be done differently. But it doesn't seem that when it comes to the borrowing habit that this government has developed, that they are prepared to even rethink. Madam President, if I was doing statistics mathematics class today, the mode of this this day would have been borrowing. That is the word that has been used and used all day. And it has been so for the last 4 years. But you would expect that perhaps under these circumstances, we would have had to rethink. Now, I believe my colleague senator who spoke before did make a very good point about having made a commitment to a loan, for example, to a bank, and not just using the money for another purpose. I understand that analogy. But, Madam President, I wish to say that while you cannot just use the money that you've secured for one purpose for another, but you can renegotiate as the borrower. You can go to your creditor and renegotiate the terms and conditions. Circumstances have changed, so you can ask for you to renegotiate. You can also cancel. Governments have had to cancel loans. It's not such a very complicated process. So we must be true to the situation as is. We speak about the circumstances that face the country now and ask people to come together and let's try and do certain things to mitigate against the threat it has posed to our country. But yet we see a government that is hell-bent on continuing along the same path with the way it goes about dealing with the country's resources. $202 million now, even if you had thought about doing it and we had told you everything about the options. This cannot be, Madam President, at this time, under these circumstances, the priority. It cannot be. While I am prepared to even be more understanding along the other lines and for the other borrowings that we have come to debate before, the COVID situation that we did have issues with, but we can see a need to pay attention to COVID. What is it about that specific loan that we are hell-bent on going ahead to borrow? Madam President, I really believe that we must, let me apologize for the last statement, Madam. I think it was a little misplaced, the hell-bent. I want to withdraw that. You may have missed it, but I know I shouldn't have said so. So I withdraw that statement. I don't think it's parliamentary. Right. So, Madam President, I really believe that the government has had an opportunity in the last few months to think about that decision. But we have not seen that. Now that we know for a fact, based on the statistics that the Ministry of Tourism has been giving us in the last few weeks, there are some straight, naked facts that we can all agree to. And we have seen a reduction, significant reduction in revenue collected at our ports. And it's obvious why. So, Madam President, how are we going to make that commitment if we are dependent on that revenue to repay that loan? How? Airports worldwide, and the Caribbean is no exception, are seeing the lowest levels of arrivals. That's a fact. It's an airport we're trying to develop. Yet, the revenue source has been seriously depleted. And we have no reason to rethink. My colleague made some suggestions about what we can do. We have not made one adjustment in terms of the sum. We're still going ahead as we were, as if everything is normal. It's not normal, Madam President. And we have admitted that. It is not as it was before. Madam President, none of us knows what the next few months are going to bring. We are approaching Christmas. We are now faced with a spike in the number of cases of COVID. We have dengue as well. We're not talking about it, but it's also a serious threat. More people have died here than dengue than than COVID. So we also have another health threat. And there are other mitigating circumstances that make the future of our country makes me very nervous about the future. And I think we must pay attention to that. We do not know what is going to happen come January. We don't know if the situation now that the U.S. has a new president, we don't know what's going to happen to our source markets. I mentioned that earlier. It's very uncertain. And in these circumstances, we have to be very cautious. Madam President, I would like to know that the situation will improve, and I hope it does, but I cannot guarantee that, and none of us here can say so. And so you would think that under these circumstances, we would have stepped back a little bit, but we haven't. So, Madam President, I want to wrap up with 2 points. And one is that the principal argument of the revenue stream through the airport tax is no longer valid because the arrival numbers have dropped and the circumstances have changed. And that is a fact. Cannot dispute that. We must also, Madam President, agree, even if we don't like it, but we must agree that the debt stock of this country is really high. It is. There is very little room, very little fiscal space to maneuver right now. And in that single loan, we are borrowing, or we're guaranteeing the borrowing of $202 million. That is a significant sum in the context of our fiscal situation. It is. And that is why, Madam President, we need to give it some serious thought. Not about whether we should do the airport, not about whether we had made a commitment, but about the current situation that exists. Let us be responsible. Let us demonstrate what we're asking St. Lucians to demonstrate. Let us pull back a little bit. We have been asked to give up some of our social activities. The Minister of Health and the Prime Minister and the CMO have asked us many times to, make some sacrifices, pull back on some of what we were doing, because everything is not okay. Yet, and I think I agree, St. Lucians must learn to make adjustments. But the government must lead by example, Madam President. Here is an opportunity to make an adjustment, but we're not. Do as I say, but not as I do. So, I want to end with an analogy, a simple one, and I think it'll just summarize what I've said. I believe my colleague Senator Jean-Pierre will probably like this one. Madam President, imagine you're a taxi driver. You own a taxi, a bus. That's working. It's in good shape. It's working. But it can do with some upgrading. You might want to put some nice rims and, nice it up, put a new AC unit inside and so on, cover your seats. But the bus is working. And because of the situation as it is, when you used to have 5 trips a day, you can maybe do 2. It has seriously affected your revenue. Your spouse, who was working at the hotels, is out of a job now because of COVID. So your revenue as a father, as a driver, is seriously compromised, and your spouse is not working. You have children at school, they still need their books, they still need food on the table, and they still need basic care. But as a driver, as a taxi owner, Madam President, you decide you go into the bank to get a loan to nice up your taxi because it's still what you use to earn your daily bread. It is still what you use to earn your daily bread, but it's working. But you're going to go to the bank and secure a loan in these times to nice up your taxi, make it look better. Maybe you'll get a few tourists. Madam President, the fact will remain that while you're going to make that decision, this is a priority decision, your children will be hungry. They will still not have the requirements because the revenue is not going to come. You will have to pay for that taxi upgrade that you did not need. Instead of looking after the needs, the immediate needs of your children who need to go to school, putting food on the table, and subsidizing for the income that your wife has lost. It's a simple situation. This is what we're facing, Madam President. We are not saying that the driver doesn't need the taxi anymore. In fact, he might be tempted to say, let me market better by making it look nice. I'll probably get more tourists. It's a brave decision, but it's not wise, Madam President. In that case, the airport is like the taxi. And your hungry children and your wife are like the St. Lucians who are without a job and need immediate attention. So here we are, Madam President. All of them are important. The airport is important. Everything is important, but it's a matter of priority. And it is an opportunity if you're a good parent, if you're a good, compassionate and caring father. Like this morning there was some mention made about gender. I'm not going there. But we do have men in this house, in this honorable house. As a responsible father, Madam President, I believe my colleague Senator would have said, I will hold on for that loan, on that loan, to nice up my taxi, and I will use the money to look after the immediate needs of my family. And when things stabilize a little better, when things start to roll, I will go back to the bank and nice up my taxi. This is what this government is demonstrating, Madam President, and that is essentially my argument. The Labour Party and the opposition have never said that we cannot fix the airport. We will never say so. We would like to see the airport upgraded. But right now, more than ever before, if the argument had been presented before about PPP and all of that, we can even throw that out of the window and cancel that loan completely. And we can wait until things are stabilized, the economy is back on its feet, the arrivals have become a little more, regulated a little better, and then we can forecast and see within the next few weeks and next few months, this is what we project because things are stable, and so we can go ahead and borrow. It's a very simple argument. And I don't think it has been unreasonable for the opposition to say to the government, rethink, revisit, reconsider, hold back. We're not saying don't do what you have to do. Hold back. This is not the best time for that kind of investment, that kind of risk, that we have no idea what's going to happen. So, Madam President, what if by February, March, the borders are closed for the U.S.? We have a loan on our backs. For the next 6 months, things change. What are we going to do? So, Madam President, I want to end here by asking that the government revisits and that the opposition, under these conditions that exist right now, sees that as a major risk. And this one is not a calculated risk. There's no calculation in this one. I think my analogy with the father, the taxi driver, and the family should have made it very clear. And so on that basis, we cannot stand here and give our full support to that loan under the current conditions that we face. Thank you, Madam President.
Honorable Minister for Home Affairs, Justice and National Security.
Thank you very much, Madam President. Madam President, I rise to give support to this motion of the borrowing of the monies, the guarantee for 202.5 million by the St. Lucia Air and Seaport Authority from a syndicate bank led by the Bank of St. Lucia. Ah, boy, in trouble. in trouble. Mr. President, I think I need to take the opportunity to congratulate you on your elevation as Speaker. So you're the Deputy Speaker for the Deputy President. And I like to say and to remind all members, all senators, that this is not a bill to borrow by the government of St. Lucia. It is a guarantee to SLASPA. So when we continue talking about the government borrowing money now and borrowing this and borrowing that, the government is not borrowing any money. we are guaranteeing a loan for SLASPA. Now, when I listen to members opposite, it is all gloom and doom, that nothing is going to change. We are going to have COVID for the rest of our lives. The experts, Dr. Fauci and all the others, have indicated that in the next couple of years, 2 years' time, that COVID may not be around. That is what the experts are saying. Only day before, yesterday, we got the news that a vaccine had been found. And that although persons are very excited about that vaccine, we still have to be a little patient, because some of the experts are saying that we have to wait maybe about the middle of next year so that things will come to normal, so that it can be used. Again, I like always to give a little history of what we are doing and what we are trying to do. In 2010-11, United Workers' Party was in office, and we implemented an airport development tax of 35 US per visitor. And I want to reiterate, per visitor. So you always say that we like foreigners. For foreigners. We left office in 2011, and the fund was over $50 million. The St. Lucia Labour Party came into office and zeroed that tax. And the rationale for zeroing the tax was that there was nothing for the tourists to enjoy, for the foreigners to enjoy. So why tax the foreigners? And they zeroed the tax. But what did they do? They turned around and put a levy on our water for the desilting of the John Compton Dam. On our own people, the people that they claim that they love, on our locals, they put the water levy on them. 5 years. Only now we are starting to see some work being done. At the John Compton Dam on the desilting. So there it was. On one hand, you took it out for the foreigners, and on the other hand, you imposed it on the people that you love so much. This motion before us here was here in 2019. Okay? Leader of Government Business said that there was the SI 124, and we are now here to replace it, because it was not compatible with the interest terms that were negotiated with the consortium of banks. There were two things that could have been done. For SLASPA to go back and to engage that consortium of banks, and you know that's not easy now, to get a group of banks to sit and listen to you. Or come here, revisit the SI 121, and change it. By doing that, we are saving over $3 million. $3 million will be saved by SLASPA by changing the terms on the dates of the repayment. And so that is important. That is important. Senator Sinclair talked about all the technical terms, and I'm happy that you gave me a lesson in building things like airports. Very informative. But at the end of the day, your sister party in Dominica and the leader of opposition business talked about the world. We are part of the world. And everybody is getting away from infrastructure work and doing this and doing that, backing down. Welcome back. So the scope of works that you're talking about was very impressive, but the leader of opposition business said that we are part of the world, and that the world was going down and trying not to do capital works. But your sister party in Dominica, sister party, the party that you went to campaign for in Dominica, is presently constructing a health facility just as we are doing. He's just announced that he's building a brand new airport, just as we want to do. Okay? So I am suggesting that you take the advice from your sister party in Dominica. The reason why you can build the airport now is because the traffic flow is a little less than what it used to be. Although, in this COVID time, we have recognized the number of airlines that are coming to St. Lucia. And had the British not closed down, we would have been getting additional flights from the United Kingdom. Funny enough, when we had Virgin Atlantic, we remembered Virgin Airlines was saying that they wanted money to come here, and we said we're not going to give it to them, and they banned St. Lucia. Interestingly enough, they were coming back because they recognized that St. Lucia was going to be viable for them. So they were going to come back. So right now, this is the time to actually build the new airport, to build a facility that is world class, so that when everything gets back to the right conditions, then we are ready, we are prepared. We also have the home port in Beaufort. I'm sure you remember the Prime Minister coming to the lower house and saying that a MOU had been signed with Carnival Corporation and Royal Caribbean, so that these ships are going to be used in Beaufort as a home port. How do we accommodate that volume of traffic with HIA in the present condition? We have to prepare for that sort of eventuality. Leader of government, the opposition business talk about PPE. And then we have two examples of persons using that formula, Barbados and Jamaica. But why did they use that formula? Because they were under the IMF structural adjustment, and the IMF will tell you how to do it. Okay? And that is the reason why they did it that way. We are not under the IMF, and so we are doing it because we think we have the capacity. Okay? SLASPA has been one of the best run, what do you call it, corporations in St. Lucia. They have done well. Every year you see, when you go and you look at the books of SLASPA, you will see the amount of profit that SLASPA makes. So we have the benefit of our people. Even when we talked about the NIC, when we were doing the support, financial support, people said everything about the management of the NIC. And I had to defend the members of the NIC. And today we are happy. For the opposition themselves, they will tell you, close the country. It's the tourists that bring in the COVID. And now they're happy. They're happy that they're seeing the tourists are coming. And certain persons are saying, but why are you not allowing them to come to the arcade now? Before they were adamant that they shouldn't come. But now we must allow them to come to the arcade to participate in the flights, in the sales of some of the things they have there. So I'm saying presently that it is a necessity that we have the space, we have the time, that we do it. You do not do an upgrade to your house when your house is filled, or you try and do it around Christmas time. You don't do that. You do it in the August holidays when your family go and spend August holidays with other friends. So the house is empty, and that's the time you're going to do your renovation. Say again? Right. So at the end of the day, this is the right time to do it. Okay? And we are not, the government is not taking any loan. I want to reiterate that. We are giving a guarantee so that if SLASPA cannot pay, then the government will come in. Yes. So, with those few words, Madam President, I want to again give my support to the motion to borrow the $202 million to guarantee the borrowing of $202.5 million by the St. Lucia Air and Seaport Authority from a syndicate of banks. I thank you.
Madam, do you wish to rebut? Senators, the question is that Parliament revoke the Finance Administration Act, resolution of Parliament to authorize the Minister for Finance to guarantee borrowing by the St. Lucia Air and Seaports Authority from a syndicate of banks led by the Bank of St. Lucia Limited to finance Hiwanora International Airport Redevelopment Project, published as Statutory Instrument Number 124 of 2019. Be it further resolved that Parliament authorize the Minister of Finance to guarantee a loan in the amount of $200,500,000 EC dollars for the purpose of financing the Hiwanora International Airport Redevelopment Project by the St. Lucia Air and Seaports Authority from a syndicate of banks led by the Bank of St. Lucia Limited as follows. $202,500,000 EC dollars. Thank you, Senator. A. Bank of St. Lucia Limited, EC $58,900,000. B. First National Bank of St. Lucia Limited, EC $54,500,000. C. Grenada Cooperative Bank Limited, EC $40,100,000. D. Antigua Commercial Bank Limited, EC $24,500,000. E. Eastern Caribbean Amalgamated Bank, EC $24,500,000. Be it further resolved that A. The loan is repayable over a period of 20 years with a 60-month moratorium on the principal payments with interest only paid. B. The interest is payable quarterly from the date of the initial disbursement of the loan, 1, at a rate of 5.5% per annum during 60-month moratorium period. 2, at a rate of not exceeding 5% per annum at the expiry of the 60-month moratorium period and the commencement of blended payments including interest and principal. C. The blended interest rate will be provided semi-annually, which will reflect the relative proportion of cash and government guarantee security, provided that the interest is payable at 1, 4.5% on the cash security provided, and 2, 5% on the government guarantee security provided. D. The blended payments, including principal and interest, to be paid monthly. And E. A commitment fee of 0.75% is payable on the disbursement of the loan. I now put the question. As many as are of that opinion, say aye. Aye. As many as are of a contrary opinion, say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Senators, we're going to move along to bills, but bear in mind that we need to be out of the Senate to adhere to the protocols. So we need to leave here between 8 and 8:30, and we still need to eat. Is there agreement to continue? Bills. Honorable Leader of Government Business.
Madam President, I beg to move the first reading of a bill shortly entitled Credit Reporting.
Credit Reporting.
Honorable Leader of Government Business.
Madam President, I beg to present the bill for second reading at the next or subsequent sitting of the Senate.
Honorable Leader of Government Business.
Madam President, I beg to move the first reading of a bill shortly entitled Public Finance Management.
Public Finance Management.
Honorable Leader of Government Business.
Madam President, I beg to present the bill for second reading at the next or subsequent sitting of the Senate.
Honorable Leader of Government Business.
Madam President, I beg to move the first reading of a bill shortly entitled Public Procurement and Asset Disposal Amendment.
Public Procurement and Asset Disposal Amendment.
Honorable Leader of Government Business.
Madam President, I beg to present the bill for second reading at the next or subsequent sitting of the Senate.
Honorable Minister in the Ministry of Tourism, Information, Broadcasting, Culture and Creative Industries, responsible for Culture and Creative Industries.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, I beg to move for the first reading of a bill shortly entitled St. Lucia Tourism Authority Amendment.
St. Lucia Tourism Authority Amendment.
Honorable Minister responsible for Culture and Creative Industries.
Madam President, I beg to move for the suspension of Standing Order number 49-2 to allow the bill to go through its remaining stages at this sitting.
Senators, the question is that the Standing Order 49-2 be suspended in order to allow the Honorable Minister to proceed with the remaining stages of the bill at this sitting. I now put the question. As many as are of that opinion, say aye. Aye. As many as are of a contrary opinion, say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Leave is granted. Proceed, Honorable Minister responsible for Culture and Creative Industries.
Thank you very much, Madam President. And Madam President, the bill, of course, the St. Lucia Tourism Authority Amendment Bill, comes out of the, let me just get my notes here. Right. Right. The amendments that we would want to make towards this bill, which focuses primarily on the inclusion of the tourism levy. We want to revise the functions of the St. Lucia Tourism Authority to focus on its core areas of marketing and information dissemination, to administer the Tourism Levy Act, and to include the permanent secretary on the board of the St. Lucia Tourism Authority. So these are the fundamental things that we would want to do in terms of the amendment. The bill is further amended. We are proposing to change the defined terms for accommodation service to tourism accommodation service and registered accommodation service provider to registered tourism accommodation service provider, to emphasize that the bill is only applicable to accommodation services provided in the tourism sector. We also want to broaden the definition of person under the new clause 27A by including a provider of a tourism accommodation service that is a hotel, boarding house, or a place that provides a tourism accommodation service and has been declared an approved tourism product or approved development under the Tourism Incentives Act, Cap 1530, or the Tourism Stimulus and Investment Act, Cap 1503, respectively. The definition is further amended to delete any reference to the number of rooms. The new clause 27B is amended to give the authority the power to register a hotel, boarding house, or place that provides a tourism accommodation service and has been declared an approved tourism product or approved development under the Tourism Investment Act, Cap 1530 of the Tourism Stimulus and Investment Act, Cap 1503, respectively, if that person fails to register with the authority. So, Madam President, in terms of other explanatory notes, the bill amends Section 5 of the Act, the functions of the authority, to streamline the functions of the authority to carry out mainly destination marketing and to include an additional responsibility for registering hotels, boarding houses, or places that provide a tourism accommodation service and have benefited from tourism incentives under the Tourism Incentives Act, Cap 1530, or the Tourism Stimulus Act, Cap 1503. Further, a provider of an accommodation service in the tourism sector has not benefited from the Tourism Incentives Act, Cap 1530, or the Tourism Stimulus and Investment Act, Cap 1530, may volunteer to be registered under the bill. Section 7 of the Act is amended to ensure that, like I said earlier, the Permanent Secretary is a member of the board of the authority by virtue of Clause 5 of the bill, and by virtue of Clause 6 of the bill, Section 9 of the Act is amended to require the authority to prepare and submit to the minister responsible for tourism a tourism destination marketing plan. The Act is also amended under Clause 7 to insert a new Section 9A, Powers of the Board, which makes provision for the powers of the Board of the Authority. And of course, Part 1A deals with the application for registration, notification of a registration, grant or denial of an application, the issue, validity, effect, display, suspension and cancellation of a certificate. The authority is also required to keep a register and publish a list of all registered tourism accommodation service providers. Part 2 of the bill with respect to finance is amended by introducing other provisions. Under Clause 9 of the bill, Section 29 of the Act is amended to introduce a new provision which stipulates that the revenue of the authority must be paid into an account at a financial institution approved by the minister. New sections, Section 29A and 29B and 29C, are also introduced in the Act under Clause 10 of the bill for the application of revenue, investment, or funds, and application of a surplus of funds to the authority. So these are some of the amendments to this Tourism Amendment Act, which basically, like I said, is there to assist us in introducing a tourism levy, to revise the functions of the SLTA to focus on its core areas of destination marketing and information dissemination, and of course to administer the Tourism Levy Act, and to include the Permanent Secretary, who is the Chief Accounting Officer, you understand, for the Ministry of Tourism, to be a part of that authority. As it is now, that does not exist. Thank you, Madam President.
Honorable Leader of Opposition Business.
Madam President, just an observation.
Tourism Authority.
With reference to Section 27B2, Roman numeral 4.
Yes.
I don't know if it was an omission, but was
yes.
That's been considered?
Yes, we did receive from the lower house, Madam President, a recommendation which we will take in the committee stage.
Very well.
Yes, that's why I didn't say anything about it. Honorable Minister responsible for culture and creative industries.
Okay. So
No, your light is on, ma'am.
oh.
Senators, the question is that the St. Lucia Tourism Authority Amendment Bill be read a second time. I now put the question. As many as are of that opinion, say aye. As many as are of a contrary opinion, say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it.
An act to amend the St. Lucia Tourism Authority Act number 8 of 2017.
Senators will take it clause by clause. Clause 2.
Interpretation.
Clause 2 stands part of the bill. Clause 2 stands part of the bill. Clause 3.
Amendment of Section 2.
Clause 3 stands part of the bill. Clause 4.
Substitution of Section 5.
Clause 4 stands part of the bill. Clause 5.
Amendment of Section 7.
Clause 5 stands part of the bill. Is it in 5? Not yet. It was just mentioned when you were out. Yeah. Clause 6.
Amendment of Section 9.
Clause 6 stands part of the bill. Clause 7.
Insertion of new Section 9A.
Clause 7 stands part of the bill. The amendment you referenced, Leader of Opposition Business, where is it?
It's in Clause 8 in 27.
Clause 8.
Insertion of new Part 1A.
Okay, can you speak to the amendment exactly?
Yes, it is to insert the word prescribe between the word further and information. In that way, it would read further prescribed information the authority requires. Roman numeral 4.
So, Clause 8, 27B2 and B4 are amended, or is amended, by inserting the word prescribed. Okay. So, Clause 8 stands part of the bill. Clause 9.
Amendment of Section 29.
Clause 9 stands part of the bill. Clause 10.
Insertion of new sections 29A, 29B, and 29C.
Clause 10 stands part of the bill. Clause 1.
Short title.
Clause 1 stands part of the bill. Senators, the question is that the committee rise and the bill be reported. I now put the question. As many as are of that opinion, say aye. As many as are of a contrary opinion, say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Senators, I beg to report that the St. Lucia Tourism Authority Amendment Bill went through committee stage with amendment. Honorable Minister in the Ministry of Tourism, Information Broadcasting, Culture and Creative Industries, responsible for culture and creative industries. Senators, the question is that the report of the committee be adopted and that the St. Lucia Tourism Authority Amendment Bill be read a third time and passed. I now put the question. As many as are of that opinion, say aye. As many as are of a contrary opinion, say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it.
Be it enacted by the Queen's Most Excellent Majesty, by and with the advice and consent of the House of Assembly and the Senate of St. Lucia, and by the authority of the same as follows. This act may be cited as the St. Lucia Tourism Authority Amendment Act 2020.
Honorable Minister responsible for Culture and Creative Industries.
Tourism levy.
Honorable Minister responsible for Culture and Creative Industries.
Madam President, I beg to move for the suspension of Standing Order 49-2 to allow the bill to go through the remaining stages at this sitting.
Senators, the question is that Standing Order number 49-2 be suspended in order to allow the Honorable Minister to proceed with the remaining stages of the bill at this sitting. I now put the question. As many as are of that opinion, say aye. As many as are of a contrary opinion, say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Leave is granted, Honorable Minister.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, the Tourism Levy Act is being implemented to impose and collect a levy on tourism accommodation services for the purposes of funding tourism marketing and development in St. Lucia. The St. Lucia Tourism Authority is the official agency responsible for marketing and promotion of St. Lucia as a tourism destination. It formally succeeded the St. Lucia Tourist Board by the passing of the St. Lucia Tourism Authority Act number 8 of 2017, which we just sought to amend. The St. Lucia Tourism Authority currently has functions over and beyond its marketing and information management, public relations for the destination, which by its nature, budgets and associated staffing are not being able to fulfill. In a review of the institutional arrangements surrounding tourism development and marketing, the functions of the St. Lucia Tourism Authority was revised to allow the agency to fully focus on destination marketing, public relations, and the promotion of St. Lucia tourism products worldwide. The implementation of a fee or fees of taxes within the accommodation sector is not a new idea. St. Lucia implemented a hotel accommodation tax at 8% of the daily room rate, and this accommodation tax was implemented in 2008 and administered by the Inland Revenue Department before. This tax, however, went directly into the consolidated fund and was not specifically earmarked for destination marketing and related matters. In fact, in 2012, the hotel accommodation tax was replaced by the value-added tax. One of the critical issues noted with the administration of the hotel accommodation tax by the Ministry of Finance was low remittances due to the tardiness and failure of hotels to deposit the fully collected amounts to the government of St. Lucia. Cash flow constraints were often cited or indicated by hotels as the reasons for non-compliance, and in several cases, hoteliers requested waivers of the outstanding payments that they collected. So mitigation strategies against non-compliance is therefore a key consideration for this new tourism levy. This is particularly important as the ability to market the destination and ensure the continued success of the most productive economic sector in this country will not be jeopardized if the levy is not fully remitted to the SLTA in a timely manner. Currently, the St. Lucia Tourism Authority operations are funded through an annual subvention from the central government. The disbursement of these funds is facilitated through the normal budget quarterly allocation process. As such, the availability of these funds is subjected to all the caprices of the budgetary process. This inhibits the ability of the SLTA to make commitments and to execute plans that span beyond the government of St. Lucia budget processes and operate at the optimum level in executing its marketing and promotional plans due to the exigencies of cash flow and the timing of it. Therefore, the government of St. Lucia, of course, is introducing the Tourism Levy Bill in conjunction with the St. Lucia Tourism Amendment Bill and the VAT amendment, which we did earlier. All three bills come together to cause the imposition and implementation of a tourism levy on tourism accommodation service in St. Lucia. The tourism levy is being introduced to reduce the dependency of tourism marketing, of tourism marketing and development on central government. Destinations within the region and further afield have instituted fees, levies, charges on the users of their products and services to ensure sustainability of the destination. So the government of St. Lucia is therefore looking to facilitate the St. Lucia Tourism Authority, its mandate, in the competitive environment with instituting a fee that corresponds to visitor arrivals. The SLTA will be responsible for implementing, collecting, and administering the tourism levy, while the fee is also earmarked to support the Tourism Council and village tourism development in St. Lucia. The priority until funds are built up to cater to all three agencies is to focus on tourism marketing initially. Therefore, St. Lucia proposes to focus on sustainability by improving the independence of the St. Lucia Tourism Authority and other tourism-related agencies, so the village tourism and, of course, the Tourism Council, to be more effective with its marketing and destination development programs by ensuring tourism, in a large measure, pays for itself. It therefore means that the government of St. Lucia can focus its financing on other core areas towards nation building, societal growth, and of course the key pillars of healthcare, education, public infrastructure, etc. The allocation of funds to the Village Tourism Initiative will increase the marketability and demand for the services provided by largely locals who own accommodation products in small communities. Conversely, the allocation of the necessary funds will help strengthen the St. Lucia Tourism Authority's ability to produce and market the island in hopes of encouraging an influx of guests to the country. Thus, the St. Lucia Tourism Authority will establish a system to allow accommodation providers on the island to easily remit the levy they collect from stayover guests. All accommodation products will stand to benefit from the overall destination marketing of St. Lucia. Once you contribute, you are part of that process. The new tourism levy will be payable by a guest of the registered tourism accommodation service provider on the supply of a tourism accommodation service. These accommodation providers are those who have benefited and currently benefit from tourism incentives under the Tourism Incentives Act, Cap 1530, or the Tourism Stimulus and Investment Act, Cap 1503. These accommodation providers constitute the formal accommodation sector. While the bill recognizes that the levy will be imposed on beneficiaries under the TIA and the TSIA, that's the both of the incentive acts, they also make provisions for the other accommodation service providers to become collectors on a volunteer basis. Therefore, this means that the base for the collection of the revenue of the SLTA would be, of course, broader based. So that is the essence of what we're trying to do with respect to the levy. We're trying to impose this levy to ensure that the St. Lucia Tourism Authority has the necessary resources to facilitate its major work, which is destination marketing, and of course the other areas that they want to meet in terms of meeting the mandate. The bill is here before all of us, and of course the main parts of the bill, part one of the bill makes provision for the administration of the bill. Part two of the bill talks about the imposition and the rate of the tourism levy. It introduces a new tourism levy that is payable by a guest of a registered tourism accommodation service provider on the supply of a tourism accommodation service under Clause 6 of the bill, and Clause 7 of the bill provides the rate of the tourism levy as specified in the schedule. So we can look at this. Part 3 of the bill talks about the collector of tourism levy and makes provision for a collector of the tourism levy. Under Clause 8 of the bill, a registered tourism accommodation service provider under the St. Lucia Tourism Authority Act, number 8 of 2017, is deemed for the purposes of this bill to be a collector of the tourism levy. And of course, there are many other parts of the bill which I'm sure most of you have read. Another interesting part is, of course, Part 5 of the bill speaks to the refund of the tourism levy, and it makes provision for the refund of the excess of an overpaid tourism levy. A guest who has overpaid the tourism levy may make a claim through the registered tourism accommodation service provider to the authority for payment of a refund of the excess amount of an overpaid tourism levy. The authority is also responsible for processing the fund under clauses 25 to 20 and 23 to 25 of the bill. This is in essence the bill, Madam President. It's the tourism levy bill. It's just a bill designed to ensure that the St. Lucia Tourism Authority remains buoyant and, of course, has the money to facilitate its operations. And so we're looking for the support of the Parliament in making this happen for the country. Thank you so much.
Senators, the question is that the tourism levy bill be read a second time. I now put the question. As many as are of that opinion, say aye. As many as are of a contrary opinion, say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it.
An act to provide for the imposition, collection, and remittance of a tourism levy and for related matters.
Again, we will take it clause by clause. Clause 2.
Interpretation.
Clause 2 stands part of the bill. Clause Part 1, clauses 3 to 5.
Administration.
Part 1, clauses 3 to 5 stand part of the bill. Part 2, clauses 6 to 7.
Imposition and rate of tourism levy.
Part 2, clauses 6 to 7 stand part of the bill. Part 3, clauses 8 to 17.
Collector of tourism levy.
Part 3, clauses 8 to 17 stand part of the bill. Part 4, clauses 18 to 22.
Collection and recovery of tourism levy.
Part 4, clauses 18 to 22 stand part of the bill. Part 5, clauses 23 to 25.
Refund of tourism levy.
Part 5, clauses 23 to 25 stand part of the bill. Part 6, clauses 26 to 28.
Miscellaneous.
Part 6, clauses 26 to 28 stand part of the bill. Schedule 1.
Section 7, rate of tourism levy.
Schedule 1 stands part of the bill. Schedule 2.
Section 8(2)(b), class of a collector.
Schedule 2 stands part of the bill. Clause 1.
Short title.
Clause 1 stands part of the bill. Senators, the question is that the committee rise and the bill be reported. I now put the question. As many as are of that opinion, say aye. As many as are of a contrary opinion, say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Senators, I beg to report that the Tourism Levy Bill went through committee stage without amendment. Honorable Minister responsible for Culture and Creative Industries.
Madam President, I move that the report of the committee be adopted and the bill be read a third time and passed.
Senators, the question is that the report of the committee be adopted and that the Tourism Levy Bill be read a third time and passed. I now put the question. As many as are of that opinion, say aye. As many as are of a contrary opinion, say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it.
Be it enacted by the Queen's Most Excellent Majesty, done with the advice and consent of the House of Assembly and the Senate of St. Lucia, and by the authority of the same as follows. This act may be cited as the Tourism Levy Act 2020. This act shall enter into force on the first day of December 2020.
Honorable Leader of Government Business.
Madam President, I move that the Senate stand adjourned, sine die.
Before we adjourn, I'd like to thank the staff of GIS who stay long hours with us to broadcast whatever we're doing here to the outer world. I'd like to thank our Sergeant-in-Arms and the police for their usual service and our protection. And I'd like to thank the Parliament staff, the Office of the Parliament, for their hard work, their usual warm support of all senators, and their constant striving for excellence. Senators, the question is that this House to stand adjourned, sine die. I now put the question. As many as are of that opinion, say aye. As many as are of a contrary opinion, say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Sitting adjourned.
Good evening once more. We now see the President of the Senate. It's about to leave the chamber, following the Sergeant-at-Arms, Sergeant Alex Morgan. And just a quick recap for you before we close our broadcast here this evening on today's proceeding in the Upper House. And the order paper, while went through today, quite a relatively long session today, bearing in mind that there were a total of 6 motions down on the bill, on the paper to be decided today. We also had the oath of the new senators, and the Senators Terry St. Clair and Lucia here being sworn in today. We had a number of papers laid by the Honorable Minister for Health and Wellness and Leader of Government Business, Senator the Honorable Mary Isaac, and also from the Honorable Minister in the Ministry of Tourism, Information, Broadcasting, Culture and Creative Industries, responsible for Culture and Creative Industries, Senator the Honorable Fortuna Belrose. And those motions we told you about, just go through them so you can have an idea of the motions looked at today by the Upper House. That Parliament authorizes the Minister of Finance to borrow an amount of $3,750,000 from the CARICOM Development Fund for the purpose of providing financial assistance to support the implementation of the Village Tourism Initiative by enhancing specified infrastructure and supporting eligible small and medium-sized enterprises. And the President of the Senate at that time making it officially known that we had the maiden presentations by the 2 new senators, Terry St. Clair and Lucia here. The second motion that Parliament authorized the Minister of Finance to borrow an additional sum of $5 million by way of credit from the International Development Association for capital expenditure for the health system strengthening project. And the third motion that Parliament authorized the Minister for Finance to guarantee a loan in the amount of €5,750,000 from the European Investment Bank by the St. Lucia Development Bank for on-lending to micro, small and medium-sized enterprises. And the fourth motion that Parliament, by affirmative resolution, approves the draft value-added tax, rate of tax, tourism sector goods and services order to vary the rate of tax for goods and services provided by a hotel and other providers in the tourism sector to set the rate of tax for tourism sector goods and services. The fifth motion that Parliament authorized the Minister of Finance to borrow an amount of $30 million from the Caribbean Development Bank, consisting of special fund resources portion in the amount of $10,800,000 and an ordinary capital resource portion in the amount of $19,200,000 for the purpose of financing the implementation of policy reform initiatives designed to support the St. Lucia COVID-19 crisis response and achieving fiscal stability. And the final motion that was looked at on the order paper today, that Parliament revokes the Finance Administration Act resolution of Parliament to authorize the Minister for Finance to guarantee borrowing by the St. Lucia Air and Seaports Authority from a syndicate of banks led by the Bank of St. Lucia Limited to finance the Huronora International Airport Redevelopment Project, published as statutory instrument number 124 of 2019. And there were a number of bills presented by the Honorable Minister for Health and Wellness and Leader of Government Business, Senator the Honorable Mary Isaacs, and they included credit reporting, public finance management, public procurement and asset disposal amendment that went to its first reading, and that has been referred to the next sitting of the Senate. But we had the Standing Order 49-2 being invoked for the bill led by the Minister in the Ministry of Tourism, Information, Broadcasting, Culture and Creative Industries, responsible for culture and creative industries. Senator the Honorable Fortuna Bell was to go through its remaining stages, and it went through those stages, read for a third time and passed, and they included the St. Lucia Tourism Authority Amendment that was ascended to the St. Lucia Tourism Authority Amendment Act 2020, and also the Tourism Levy Bill that also assented to the St. Lucia Tourism Levy Act 2020. So that's the roundup for today's sitting of the Upper House of the St. Lucia House of Assembly. We thank you very much for joining us on the National Television Network. We certainly hope that you stay safe and have a very pleasant evening.